Hi there, it's me, Finn, and tonight we're going to talk about something most people think they already know, but almost nobody really does. We're told that medieval people were dirty, that they never bathed, that they lived in mud, and smelled awful. But is that really true, or is it just one of those stories that gets repeated until nobody asks questions anymore? You might be surprised to know that people back then did care about staying clean. They just had very different ideas about what clean really meant, and how they did it. That's where the quiet mystery begins. So tonight, let's go far, far back in time, to a world before showers, before soap as we know it, before running water and faucets, where rivers flowed through forests, baths were made of wooden tubs, and cleanliness was something you felt with your senses, not just saw in a mirror. Let's start by subscribing. Now close your eyes if you want, and let the story begin. It's early morning in a small medieval village. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the sky is gently brightening. A soft blue creeps over the land. A rooster has crowed somewhere, and a few quiet footsteps are already heard near the edge of the village. The air smells of damp earth and cool mint. Inside a small cottage made of timber and thatch, a woman stirs from her straw mattress. She's wrapped in a coarse wool blanket, and the air is chilly, but she doesn't seem to mind. She rises slowly, stretches her arms, and moves to the wooden bowl set beside the hearth. It's not much, just a round basin made of smoothed oak, filled with water fetched the night before from the stream, just beyond the fields. The water is cold now, still and dark in the soft light. She dips her hands in, splashes her face gently, and takes a cloth, more like a rag than a towel, and wipes down her skin. There is no soap, not yet, but she rubs her hands together anyway, and the cloth is rough enough to scrub away a little of yesterday. It's not a full bath, but to her it feels clean. This is how a medieval morning might begin. The idea of bathing, for most villagers, wasn't about using strong chemicals or scrubbing with foamy soap. It was about wiping away what felt heavy: dust, smoke, sweat. The goal was to feel light again, fresh for the new day, even if not sparkling in the way we think of now. There were full baths, of course, but not daily, sometimes not even weekly. That didn't mean people didn't care. It meant they worked with what they had: cold rivers, warming fires, rough cloths, herbs, oils and thyme. Let's go outside now. Let's walk through the village. The dirt path underfoot is firm. The grass at the sides is wet with dew. To your right is a stream. It runs slowly this time of year. In the mornings you'll often see people here, not just collecting water but washing. Some rinse their hands and faces. Others squat near the edge, washing clothes. A few brave ones step in, carefully, lifting the hems of their tunics, shivering at the cold. This water isn't pure, but it's familiar. They know it. They trust it. At least for simple things. What people often forget is that medieval folks had public bathhouses, especially in towns and cities. Yes, real bathhouses, with heated water, benches, steam. They weren't always luxurious, but they existed, and people used them. Imagine a stone building, near the center of a small town. Inside, steam hangs in the air. Light filters through small windows. Water is warmed over fires in large copper basins. Some is poured into shallow wooden tubs. Others soak cloths in warm water and press them to their faces. It's not quiet. People talk, laugh, even sing. There's a social feeling to it, a comfort. For a few pennies you can sit in the warmth, let the sweat cleanse your skin, and feel human again. Of course, not everyone had this. Villagers in remote places made do with much less, but even there, people found ways to cleanse. Take herbs, for example. In many parts of Europe, people grew or foraged for plants like lavender, rosemary, mint, and sage. These weren't just for cooking or healing. They were used to freshen up. Someone might boil mint leaves in water, let it cool, then dip a cloth in it, and wipe their skin. The scent would linger, faint, but soothing. Or they'd tie dried herbs into little bundles, and hang them near where they slept, hoping the aroma would make them feel cleaner even without a bath. Sometimes herbs were thrown into bathwater too, not for bubbles, but for the smell. It made a plain soak feel just a bit more special. But what about soap? Well, yes, they had soap, but it was nothing like what we know today. Early medieval soap was rough, often made from animal fat, lye and ash. It cleaned in a way, but could be harsh on the skin, so not everyone used it often. The richer folk could sometimes get softer, imported soaps made from olive oil, especially from the Islamic world, where soap making was more refined. These soaps smelled of laurel or lemon, and were prized by nobles who could afford them. But for a villager, a harsh lump of brown-gray soap might sit by the washing basin, used sparingly, especially on laundry or hair, sometimes never on the face. Which brings us to hair. How did people clean their hair? Again, the answer is gently, slowly, carefully. Women with long hair might brush it for a long time each morning, with combs made from bone or wood, not just to style it, but to remove dust and oil. Washing was rare, maybe once a week, or even less. But when they did, it involved buckets, warmed water, maybe a pinch of soap, and lots of patience. Some used egg yolk, others used vinegar rinses. Rosemary water was also a favorite. It made the hair feel light and smells. Men usually kept their hair shorter, and some shaved entirely, especially monks, but even they would rinse and scrub their scalps now and then. A rough cloth, a bit of water, a clean feeling, that was the goal. Let's go back inside now. Inside the cottage, the woman from earlier is preparing a small pot of porridge. It bubbles gently over the fire. The air smells of oats and wood smoke. Her hands are clean, not hospital clean, but cleaner than they were when she rubs a bit of beeswax onto her lips, then checks the herbs drying near the door. She is not fancy, but she is not filthy either. People back then knew that illness and dirt sometimes went hand in hand, even if they didn't know why. They believed in balance, humors, fresh air. Washing the face and hands was seen as healthy. Clean clothing mattered. Wiping off sweat mattered. Even the poor tried. It's easy to imagine medieval people as covered in filth all the time, but that's mostly an image created by art, or by later writers looking back with judgment. In truth, many people in the Middle Ages would probably be offended if you called them dirty. They might not match modern standards, but they did what they could, with water, herbs, cloth, time, and care. In castles, there were even servants who carried heated water up long stairs for baths. Nobles might bathe once a week, or on special feast days. Some kings, like Charlemagne, were famous for bathing regularly and keeping their nails trimmed. Even monks had rules about washing. Cloisters had special fountains, called lavabos, where brothers washed before meals and prayed. Cleanliness wasn't just about appearance, it was about order, about respect, about not bringing dust from the outside into the sacred places of the day. The table, the church, the bed, even bedtime had its own kind of cleanliness. People brushed off their feet. They changed into sleeping shifts. They might rinse their faces, or wipe their hands one last time before lying down. And all of this, done slowly, in rhythm with the seasons. More baths in summer, fewer in winter, a balance with nature, a sense of calm. Let's pause for a moment here. Imagine it's evening now. The same village. Smoke curls from chimneys. The stream glows silver in the moonlight. Inside the cottages, candles flicker. A girl combs her hair. A man washes his hands. A child soaks a cloth in warm water and presses it to his cheeks. No soaps, no tubs, no tiles, but still, a kind of peace, a kind of clean. And in the soft dark of the night, the village feels ready for rest. The moon slowly climbs higher over the village. The cottages below grow still. Only the faintest sound of wind moves through the trees. Somewhere a dog gives a quiet bark, then stops. The firewood crackles faintly inside homes where warmth still clings to stone walls and earthen floor. Inside one of those homes, a small child curls beneath a wool blanket, their cheeks still damp from a cloth their mother used to wipe away the day's dust. It wasn't a bath, not really, but it was enough to feel soft, fresh, close to comfort. Cleanliness back then was more a feeling than a rule. Now let's gently move beyond the village, toward a small monastery nestled just beyond the hills. It's made of stone, square and quiet, with an arched doorway and a central courtyard. The bells have long since rung for evening prayers, and the brothers have returned to their cell. But even now, inside this silent place, there is a routine, a rhythm that centers on staying clean, in both body and spirit. Each monk has a small basin in his room. A clay jar of water stands nearby. Before sleep, most will wipe their faces and hands with damp cloth, a daily ritual tied not only to health, but humility. One of the older monks, Brother Thomas, has a soft bristled brush he uses to scrub beneath his fingernail. He was a carpenter before joining the abbey, and still feels more peace when his hands are cared for. He dips the brush in a little bowl of vinegar water, scrubbing gently. The smell is sharp, but soothing. Cleanliness here isn't about beauty, it's about discipline, about removing distraction. Dirt is not sinful, but it can be a sign of disorder, of neglect, of letting the outside world cling too tightly. Washing is a way to return to stillness. In the cloister garden, near the washing fountain, herbs grow in neat rows: lavender, mint, marjoram, chamomile. These are used in medicines, yes, but also for simple pleasures. A cloth dipped in lavender water might be pressed to a tired face. Chamomile can be steeped, its steam inhaled, a gentle cleansing not of skin, but of breath. This quiet order of monks lives simply. They bathe only occasionally, in a shared bathhouse that is warmed once a week, but daily, they wash their hands before every meal, before every prayer, not with soap, but with fresh water and intention. The lavatorium, a long stone basin, set into the wall, runs with cold water from a nearby spring. Each monk stops there, rolls up his sleeves and washes. Slowly, patiently. The water is cold even in summer, but it wakes the senses. The stone under their hands is smooth from decades of touch. This washing is a pause, a moment of peace. Far from the monastery, back in the towns, cleanliness took a different form. In marketplaces, the scent of fresh herbs, salted meat, and baked bread mingles with the grime of busy feet. Streets aren't paved, most are hard-packed dirt, or stone. People walk barefoot, or in simple shoes, made from leather or cloth. Dust is a part of daily life. But even here, in the hum of trade and noise, people seek out ways to clean. Many homes have small wooden tubs. These are filled on bath days, often once a week. Water must be drawn by hand, heated by fire, carried in pots. It is a labor just to prepare a bath. Often the same water is shared. First the father, then the mother, then the children. By the end the water is murky, but the warmth lingers. People rinse their skin with ladles or cloths. They sit quietly. They don't soak long. The point isn't luxury, it's release. A way to scrub away the weight of work, of sweat, of soot from the hearth. Some towns have bathhouses, public ones, shared by many. These are not secret places. They are common, ordinary, woven into the fabric of daily life. A man might finish his labor, stop by the bathhouse, pay a small coin and enter. Inside, the air is warm, not hot, but thick with steam. Water is heated in great kettles. Tubs are lined in a row. Some bathhouses are simple. Others in larger towns are more elaborate, with rooms for sweating, for rinsing, for resting. They may offer massages, or herbal treatments, or oils. The smell inside is not unpleasant. A mix of damp wood, herbs, and skin. Some bring their own towels, others borrow. People talk quietly, or not at all. There is no shame here. Bathing is not hidden. Men and women sometimes bathe separately, sometimes together, depending on the rules of the place. It is not always proper by modern standards, but it is not seen as strict. Of course, this practice changes over time. In later centuries, some leaders will close bathhouses, fearing they spread disease. But in the early and high medieval period, they are accepted, even encouraged. Some religious orders support them. Others raise concern. But for the common people, they are simply part of life. Cleanliness also came from the clothes people wore. You see, bathing was not the only way to feel clean. Often people changed their linen underclothes, the long shirts, or shifts, worn beneath tunics. more often than outer garments. These underclothes absorbed sweat. They touched the skin directly, and so, washing them was a regular task. A woman might scrub a shirt, in a river, using a rough stone or a wooden paddle to beat out the dirt. She would rinse it until the water ran clear. Then she would hang it to dry in the sun, which helped bleach and freshen it. Some used soapwort, a plant with natural cleaning properties, boiled into a frothy liquid, then poured onto fabric. It smelled green and earthy. It didn't sting the hands like lye soap. It was gentle, natural. Children, too, had their own cleaning routines. Often they were told to rinse their hands and feet before meals, or before bed. They didn't always obey, but the habit was there. It was taught. People brushed their teeth, though not as we do today. Small twigs were used, chewed until one end frayed into a kind of brush. Some rubbed salt on their gums. Others used ashes. It wasn't sweet, but it worked. In some homes, people kept wooden combs, or bone toothpicks, tied to belts or kept near the hearth. Cleanliness wasn't perfect, but it was present, a part of daily life. Even in times of illness, people turned to washing. They believed that bad smells caused sickness, a theory called miasma. So they tried to stay clean to stay healthy. They burned herbs, like juniper, or sage. They swept floors. They washed walls with vinegar. During plagues, doctors carried pomanders, little balls filled with fragrant spices, not just for smell, but protection. In noble households, cleanliness was part of display. A lord might wash his hands before and after a feast, with servants pouring water over silver basins. Towels were embroidered. Water was scented with rose, or orange blossom. It wasn't just clean, it was elegant. At weddings, brides might bathe before the ceremony, their hair washed and oiled, their skin perfumed. The bath was both symbolic and practical, a new beginning. Some women used creams made from almond oil, honey and beeswax, to soften their skin, not daily, but for special day, or for healing, a cracked heel, a sunburn, a winter chill. There were remedies passed down from mother to daughter, a paste made from crushed rose petals, a cloth soaked in rainwater, and left in the moonlight. Was it magic? Maybe, or maybe just care. A moment of stillness. Let's return now to the village from earlier. It's morning again. The sky is gray. A light rain has fallen overnight, making the grass slick and shining. A man steps outside with a bucket. He tips it to catch water from the eaves of the roof. Rainwater. Clean. Cold. Precious. He carries it inside. His wife dips her hands into it. Smiles. She wets a cloth. Wipes her face. Her neck. The water smells of sky. No smoke. No wood. Just air. She hands the cloth to her daughter, who laughs at the cold, then dabs it to her cheek. Her fingers are sticky with honey from breakfast. She rinses them, slowly. She dries them on her apron. They do not have soap today, but they do not need it. The water is enough. And that in many ways was the heart of medieval cleanliness. It was enough. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't scientific. But it was thoughtful. It was daily. It was quiet. Not everyone had access to the same things. A rich merchant might own a copper tub, have servants to fill it. A poor farmer might bathe in a stream, but both in their own way sought to be clean. Sometimes it was about comfort, sometimes about health, sometimes about faith. In churches, priests washed their hands before touching holy objects. In hospitals, nuns cleaned wounds with boiled water. In taverns, barmaids wiped down tables with vinegar cloths. Not because they understood germ, but because they understood mess. They knew how it felt to sit in a clean shirt, to run a comb through freshly brushed hair, to wash dust from one's feet, after walking all day. That feeling of starting fresh, even just a little, was cherished. It was enough to make one feel human again. As the day unfolds, people move about the village. Children chase chickens. A man mends a fence. A woman gathers herbs. A boy spills milk and is scolded, then forgiven. And somewhere in a quiet corner of a cottage, a basin is filled again. A cloth is dipped. A face is wiped. And the story of staying clean continues. Not in grand ways, not in sparkling white tiles, but in these soft, ordinary, forgotten moments of medieval life. The fire is burning low now, just a quiet orange glow in the heart. Somewhere in the back corner of the room, a pot of water sits warming, not boiling, just warm enough for comfort. The mother dips a cloth in it, squeezes it out, and carefully begins to wipe her young son's arms. He's been outside all morning helping his father stack wood. His hands were covered in dust, his elbows smudged from the ground, but he doesn't complain. The warm cloth feels nice. He watches the steam curl up toward the wooden beams overhead and blinks slowly. There is no rush in this moment. Cleaning the body in medieval times was often about slowness, not like our modern rush to shower and go. No, it was part of the rhythm of the day, something to be done with calm hands, without hurry. In richer homes, this care could be more elaborate. A young noblewoman, for example, might have a servant prepare her a wash basin each morning. Water warmed over the fire, poured into a polished copper bowl, with rose petals, or a few drops of scented oil added in. A soft linen cloth is folded carefully on the table beside it. She would sit at her dressing table, slowly dip the cloth, gently press it to her cheeks, her neck, her hands. There's no soap here either. Not every day. Soap, even the nice kind, could be drying. Instead, it's the water and the cloth that do the work. Then comes her hair. It's long, heavy, woven into braids. She doesn't wash it often, perhaps every 2 weeks, maybe longer. But each day she brushes it carefully, over and over, 100 strokes. They sometimes say, not to clean it, but to keep it soft, to remove tangles, to lift away the debt. And after brushing, she might rub a bit of oil into the ends, something light, like almond or olive oil, just enough to give it sheen. Her fingers move slowly, not as a task, but as a ritual, a way to care for herself, a way to prepare for the day ahead. But not all people had time for this. In the streets of a town, a blacksmith is already sweating by the second hour after sunrise. The forge is hot, his apron is stiff with soot and ash, his hands are thick with grease. But even he finds time during breaks to rinse his arms in a bucket of water outside the shop door. He doesn't mind the cold. He prefers it. It cools his skin. He runs the water down his forearms, scrubbing with his fingertips. The soot never fully disappears, but the heaviness fades. That's enough. At the nearby stables, a young stable boy finishes mucking out the stalls. He's ankle deep in hay and damp earth. Before his midday meal, he walks to the trough and dunks his hands in. Not clean water, the horses drink from it, after all, but better than nothing. He scrapes under his nails with a sliver of wood, wipes his face with his sleeve, and sits to eat. People used what they had. Water, mostly, and patience. Soap, when available. Herbs, when affordable. Towels, when clean. But most of all, they used habit. They did small things every day to keep the dirt from becoming too much. Even in the cities where filth piled faster, people had their routines. Chamber pots were emptied in the mornings. Windows opened to let in fresh air. Straw was thrown on muddy streets to soak up waste. It wasn't perfect, but it was effort. And above all, hands were washed often. There are records of hand washing before meals, after work, after visiting the sick, before prayer. Clean hands weren't just about health, they were about respect. You didn't touch food or sacred things with dirty fingers. That rule ran deep. Some households kept hand basins near the door. Guests might be offered water to wash upon arrival. In wealthier homes, a servant would carry a pitcher and a bowl, pouring gently as the guest rubbed their hands and dried them with a clean cloth. At feasts, this became a ceremony. A servant would kneel. Another would carry the basin. Perfumed water might be used, scented with rose water or citrus if available. The hands were the only part washed, but it made the whole person feel fresh. Cleanliness and hospitality were tied together, and so were religion and hygiene. Let's visit a cathedral now, a large one in a city. The bells ring across the rooftops, echoing down alleyways and market squares. Inside the cathedral, the air is still and cool. Stone arches stretch high above, candles flicker along the walls. You can smell wax, incense, old wood. Before entering, worshippers often rinsed their hands in the holy water basin near the door. Not for germs, they didn't know about those yet, but for purification, symbolic. Yes, but also real. A splash of water on the face, a breath of cooler air. A moment to feel new again. Priests, too, washed their hands before Mass. They poured water over their fingers at the altar, letting it fall into a small silver bowl. It was part of the liturgy, part of the mystery. In monasteries, the same was true. Brothers washed before prayer, before meals, before tending the sick. Cleanliness was part of the rule, a daily act of humility and care. And speaking of the sick, let's go now to a medieval hospital. Not the kind you might imagine, full of beds and white walls, but more like a large hall, lined with wooden cots, each with a straw mattress and woolen blanket. Nuns move between the rows, carrying cloths and jars. They care for wounds, bring broth, change linens, and yes, they wash gently, with water warmed over fire, sometimes with wine or vinegar, used to clean sores or chill fevers. Lavender oil is rubbed on temples, rose water dabbed onto skin. There is no penicillin, no antiseptic, but there is cleanliness, as much as can be managed. The belief that clean linens, fresh air, and washed skin could comfort if not cure, that mattered deeply. Let's step away now, outside again, toward the fields. Here a shepherd sits beneath a tree. His flock grazes nearby. He pulls a comb from his pouch and runs it through his hair, slowly, carefully. His hands are cracked, sunburnt. He's been outside for days, but he still tends to himself. He takes a small cloth from his bag, one he soaked in vinegar 2 days ago, and presses it to the back of his neck. It smells sharp, but it cools the skin, keeps the flies away, refreshes the spirit. That's the thing about medieval cleanliness. It was tied to sensation. People weren't thinking in terms of germs or bacteria. They were thinking about how it felt: a clean shirt, a cool cloth, the smell of herbs, the warmth of a bath. These things gave comfort, and comfort gave peace. Let's visit a bathhouse again. This one is in a large city. It's a quiet afternoon. The crowds have passed. The workers are gone. A few people remain, soaking in the long wooden tubs. Steam rises in soft curls. A man sits back, eyes closed, letting the warmth ease his muscles. A woman nearby dips a sponge into her bath water, presses it to her arms. She hums softly, an old tune, maybe something from childhood. No one speaks. No one hurries. The walls are decorated with painted tiles, simple flowers, leaves. There are wooden benches to sit on, tables with oils and herbs. A servant moves quietly between them, offering clean cloths, pouring warm water. Some people come here for pain, a bad knee, a sore back, others for company, but many, just to feel new again. It's not extravagant, it's ordinary, beautiful in its simplicity. After bathing, people dry themselves slowly. They redress, often in clean linen, and step back into the world a little light. Back in the village, the afternoon turns golden. Sunlight filters through apple trees. A woman kneels at a small tub near her door, washing her husband's shirt. She uses a smooth stone to rub out a stain, dipping the cloth in water again. And a child helps by stomping on some trousers in another basin, laughing at the squelch of water beneath her feet. It's not serious work, but it's something. The clean clothes will be hung over a line stretched between 2 trees. The breeze will carry away the day, and by nightfall, the family will wear fresh garments to bed. Fresh doesn't mean perfect. It just means better than before. And that again was the goal. People knew that dirt came with life, from walking, working, cooking, farming, but they also knew it could be managed, controlled, lifted off. At least a little. Even during hard times, war, plague, famine, people still tried. They wiped down tables, combed hair, washed bedding. Not every day, but often enough to feel human. It was the little acts that mattered. A cloth left soaking in herbs overnight. A wooden comb passed from mother to daughter. A bar of soap saved for a wedding day. A tub filled with rainwater, warmed by the sun. These weren't grand gestures, but they were care, and care is where cleanliness begins. As the sun sets again over the land, smoke rises once more from chimneys. Inside each home, The day ends as it began, with water, a splash to the face, a rinse of the hands, a brushing of the hair, a wiping of the feet, a settling of the dust, and in the soft dark of evening, a stillness returns. The people of the Middle Ages did not have hot showers, or perfumed soaps, or bright white towels, but they had something else, a rhythm, a quiet knowledge, that to wash was to breathe again, to care, to start over. And so as the world outside fades into sleep, the story of how people kept clean continues, one slow motion at a time. A soft rain begins to fall sometime before midnight, just a hush, almost like mist, brushing the rooftops, tapping gently on wooden shutters, darkening the straw thatch with a low glisten. The village rests beneath it. Even the animals are quiet. The sheep huddled together under the overhangs, the chickens nesting in dry corners. But in one cottage, a woman stirs. She isn't old, but not young either. Her bones ache more in the cold now, and rain, even soft as this, makes her joints sing. She doesn't mind though, she's used to rising early, or rising in the middle of the night when sleep is shallow and the world is still. She moves to the fire. It's nearly out. A few glowing embers wait. Patient and warm, she adds a bit of kindling, blows gently. The flame flickers, then catches. She doesn't speak. There's no need. The quiet is enough. Near the hearth is a small iron pot. She lifts it carefully, fills it from a jug of rainwater, and hangs it over the fire. She sits back and waits. The fire hums. The rain murmurs. Nothing else moves. When the water is warm, not hot, just enough, she dips a rag into it and presses it against her face. Her eyes close. She holds it there, just breathing. The warmth sinks in. It's not a bath, but it's a washing, a cleansing, a comfort, a ritual older than memory. A cloth, water, skin, breath. In the world of medieval people, night was not only a time to rest, it was a time to prepare. The idea of waking in the middle of the night, not fully, but just for a short while, was common. Some called it the first sleep, and the second sleep. Between them was a gentle hour of stillness, a time to think, to pray, or to wash. Water fetched the evening before was used sparingly. It had to last. The well was far, the bucket heavy, and yet, even in this sleepy moment, she wipes her arms, her chest, the backs of her hands. Her skin is worn, but still strong. And tonight, she wants to feel clean. The cloth is rough, woven linen, fraying at the edges, but it does the job. The water smells slightly of smoke from the fire. She doesn't mind. It reminds her of warmth. She will go back to sleep soon, but not before brushing her hair. Her comb is carved from bone, smooth from decades of use. It has wide teeth, not fine, made for untangling, not styling. She works through her hair slowly, untangling knots, letting the strokes fall into a rhythm that matches her breath. In this world, brushing one's hair wasn't about appearance. It was about feeling settled, quiet, clean, ready. As dawn breaks, light returns to the land. The clouds linger, and the ground glistens. The cobblestones in the center of the town shine with puddles, and the trees drip softly onto rooftops and cloaks. In the town square, a baker opens his shutters. The smell of rising dough has already begun to fill the lane. The oven is hot, fed through the night, its coals carefully managed. But before he touches the dough again, he walks to the back room. There, a bowl of water waits, cold, from the well. He washes his hands. No soap, just water. He rubs them together, wipes them dry on a clean cloth, hanging from a peg on the wall. The dough, he knows, must not be touched with unwashed hands, not just for the health of others, though that matters, but because the work requires attention. The bread rises better when it is made with care. Later, his daughter will come and sweep the floor with a bundle of stiff reeds, tied into a broom. She will mop it with vinegar and water. Not every day, but after a heavy rain, she will wipe the counters, air out the cloth. Cleanliness in the workplace mattered too. Let's follow another thread now, to a woman who makes candles. She works in a narrow building, near the edge of the town. It smells always of wax, beeswax. Mostly though tallow too. The air is thick, sweet, and heavy. Before she begins her work, she rolls up her sleeves, and washes her arms in a basin. The wax, when hot, can stick. She oils her hands lightly with goose fat. It protects the skin. When she finishes for the day, she scrapes the wax from her apron, scrubs her nails with a dull knife, and soaks her fingers in a mixture of salt and warm water. It softens them, draws out the ache. There is no perfume here, no luxury, but there is care. And for medieval workers, this care, this cleaning wasn't just about skin. It was about pride, dignity, feeling whole after hours of toil. Let's step further out, into the countryside. A farmhouse stands alone in a field of rye. Inside, the wife is boiling water over the fire, not for cooking, for laundry. She's set up 2 wooden tubs outside, under a wide awning to shield from the rain. In one, she mixes water with ashes and lye, homemade soap, harsh, yes, but strong. In the other, clean water waits for rinsing. She soaks her family's underclothes first, linen shifts, woolen hose, tunics with darkened sleeves from labor. She scrubs them on a flat board, beats them gently with a wooden paddle, rubs the worst of the grime with coarse salt. Her daughter brings her a bunch of thyme. They throw it in the rinse water. It helps with smell. And when the laundry is hung, the wind will carry its scent. The clothesline stretches from one tree to another. Wooden pegs hold the damp fabric in place. The wind is soft. The clothes will dry slowly, but they will and that night, her family will sleep in garments that feel fresher than any feast. Clean shirts are a kind of peace. Back in the city, another ritual plays out, this time in a wealthier home. A noblewoman prepares for a visit from guests. Her chambermaid brings out a shallow copper basin and a jug of rose water, imported from abroad. It was expensive, but the lady loves it. She rinses her hands in the perfumed water, then dabs her neck and temples. The scent is light, not overwhelming. She doesn't bathe today. She did so yesterday, in a tub prepared in her chambers, water heated in the kitchen, and carried up by 4 servants. The bath was filled with petals, milk, even, a luxury. But today, a small washing is enough. Her hair is combed, not washed. It takes too long to dry. Instead, a cloth soaked in rosemary water is patted onto her scalp. It smells fresh, makes her feel lively. She changes into a clean gown, blue, with embroidery at the cuffs, and she sits near the window, reading a letter, feeling the breeze. Her world is not that of the village, but her rituals are not so different. Cleanliness was shaped by class. Yes, but not defined by it. Everywhere, from farm to monastery to castle, people found ways to keep clean. Even those who had little still tried. There are stories of beggars using puddles to rinse their faces, of travelers washing in rivers, of pilgrims bathing in holy springs. The sacred and the clean were often close. At shrines, visitors were encouraged to wash, to cleanse not just their bodies, but their intentions, to leave behind the dust of the road. Some even believed certain waters had healing powers, that to bathe in them was to be made whole. And while much of this was faith, not science, the act of washing did bring relief. In inns and taverns, hand washing was often expected before meals. A bowl of water passed down the table, a cloth laid out. It was not optional, it was tradition, and tradition carried weight. Cleanliness also had seasons. In spring, when the world warmed again, people bathed more often. Clothes were washed more easily. Water was abundant. In winter, things were harder. Water froze. Fires burned low. Baths were rare. But people still wiped down, still changed linens, still did what they could. Children learned early. They were taught to wash their hands, to rinse their faces, to brush their hair. Not always perfectly, but in some towns, bathhouses even had special hours for children and families. The idea was not punishment, it was community. Bathhouses were places of laughter too, places where people talked, shared news, relaxed, and yes, sometimes they were places of mischief, but mostly they were places of warmth. Cleanliness was not about being sterile. It was about being present, feeling the wind on freshly washed skin, breathing in the scent of lavender, watching the ripples as water spills over hands. These are not grand things, but they ground the day, and even now, so many centuries later, they remain with us. A splash of water on the face, the feel of a clean shirt, the comfort of brushing your hair before bed, all echoes of a time when people, though far from perfect, still reached for calm, for balance, for lightness in the body and stillness in the soul. And so, as another night settles over the medieval world, and the last candle burns low, and the wind softens again outside the shuttered windows, we return once more to water, the basin, the cloth, the breath. One more slow wipe across the face, a final brushing of hair, a quiet sigh. The day is done. And the story, the soft, forgotten story of how people kept clean continues. There's a stillness in the air that only comes at the very end of the day, the kind of quiet that rests deep in the walls of old homes and lingers between the wooden beams, like the last hush before sleep arrives. Inside one of these homes, a cottage near the edge of a small medieval town, the fire has settled into deep orange coals. The faintest scent of roasted herbs lingers in the air. Maybe from dinner, maybe from the dried bundles hanging by the door. A young man sits beside the hearth, slowly rubbing his feet with a damp cloth. They're sore from walking, long hours in the fields. The cloth is soaked in warm water with thyme and marjoram, not for any medical reason, just because it smells nice. It reminds him of summer. He presses the cloth to the arches of his feet, then to the backs of his ankles, and closes his eyes. This to him is clean. The idea of washing the feet before bed was common in many households, especially for people who walked a lot, which was nearly everyone. After all, the roads were rough, sometimes muddy, often dusty. The shoes were simple, thin leather soles, no socks unless you were wealthy, and even then they didn't do much against the dirt. So every night before slipping into bed, many people made time for their feet. A small bowl, a piece of cloth, a little water, maybe warmed if you were lucky, and that was all it took to feel human again. In some places, foot washing had a deeper meaning. In monasteries, the act was sometimes done by the abbot himself, washing the feet of the brothers, or of guests, a sign of humility, service, and shared humanity. During religious festivals or important events, it became a ceremony. But even outside those walls, ordinary people still followed the habit. It didn't need to be special, it was just something that made the world feel a little quieter, a little less heavy. Back in the village, the night deepens. Somewhere an owl calls from the woods. The wind shifts, bringing the smell of damp leaves and chimney smoke. Inside a nearby house, a mother gently wipes the face of her baby with a cloth dipped in rose water. She sings softly, as she does. Not a lullaby, really. More of a rhythm she's known since childhood. Just a hum, a melody passed down. Her grandmother used to hum it while washing linens by the stream. The rose water isn't strong, just enough to scent the cloth. She doesn't use soap, not for a baby. The cloth is soft, and she folds it over as she wipes each cheek, then under the chin, then behind the ears. The baby's eyes flutter closed. Children were often cleaned this way, not bathed every day, but wiped carefully, lovingly. A damp cloth, a clean shift, a brushed curl of hair. Sometimes, if the weather was warm, they'd be bathed in the tub after the adults, but more often, it was these small rituals that kept them fresh. Outside, rain begins again. Just a light drizzle, barely heard unless you listen closely. The roofs darken, the gutters drip. Rainwater was precious. People caught it in barrels, in jugs, in pails left under eaves. It was often softer than well water, especially useful for washing hair, because it didn't leave it stiff or heavy. Some women believed rainwater left out overnight was the best kind, especially if the moon was full. Superstition, maybe, but it gave the water meaning, and meaning made everything more beautiful. Let's walk now toward the outskirts of town, where the bathhouse stands. Quiet now, closed for the night, its doors shut, the fire inside reduced to glowing ash. Earlier in the day, this place was alive with warmth and voice. The bathhouse keeper, A large woman with strong arms and a voice like thunder when needed, had filled the tubs, stoked the fire, laid out the benches. People had come and gone. An old man with stiff knees, who soaks every week, a pair of weavers covered in lint and dye, a woman who just likes the quiet of the steam room. The water had been heated in copper kettles, poured carefully into wooden tubs. Some had herbs floating in them, chamomile, rosemary, mint, not for health but for comfort. Others just smelled of warm wood and clean skin. Now, all is still. The tubs have been emptied. The cloths hung to dry. The floors swept. In the corner, a pot of water still steams faintly, forgotten. It smells of lavender. Even in towns without bathhouses, people found ways to bathe. Some went to rivers, though only in the warmer months. Rivers could be dangerous, unpredictable, but if the water was calm and shallow, a group of women might bathe together, or a group of men. Modesty mattered, but not to the extent we might imagine today. People understood bodies. They lived close to them. Dirt wasn't shameful. It was natural, but that didn't mean they liked it. A common form of bathing involved filling a large tub, often made of wood, lined with cloth or straw to protect the skin, and sitting in it while another person poured water over you. This might happen once a week, or even once a month, depending on time and resource. For special occasions, weddings, childbirths, important feasts, people often bathed ahead of time. Clean clothes were worn, hair was combed, nails trimmed, skin scrubbed with cloths, or bundles of herbs. Some even oiled their skin, especially those who lived in drier areas, where wind and sun cracked the hands and face. Animal fat was used when nothing else was available, but wealthier people used almond oil, or sometimes imported olive oil. These oils served a purpose, not only to soften skin, but to help remove dirt. Rubbed in, and then wiped off with a cloth, they carried away grime that water alone couldn't lift. And of course there were perfume, not the kind we know now, bottled and sprayed, but small packets of crushed flowers, or scented oils, dabbed behind the ears, or on the wrists, sometimes sewn into clothing, sometimes tucked into pouches, or worn around the neck. Smell mat. People believed that pleasant smells brought health, while foul ones brought disease, so they surrounded themselves with good scents when they could. Herbs, spices, wood smoke, clean linen, soap if they had it. Even in times of illness, when people feared contagion, they burned not just for purification, but because they believed scent was a shield. In plague times, people held cloths soaked in vinegar to their noses. Others carried pomanders, small metal balls filled with cloves, cinnamon, nutmeg. Richer people paid apothecaries to make scented pastes they could rub on the skin, or wear beneath their clothes. It wasn't science, but it was something, a kind of armor. Let's return to the village now. A boy sits outside, peeling bark from a stick. He's been told not to. He'll dull his knife, but he enjoys the quiet work. Nearby, his sister washes carrots in a bucket of stream water. Their mother calls out from the house. It's time for washing. They bring the bucket inside. It's still cool from the stream, and their hands sting a little when they dip them in, but they laugh. They splash each other. Their mother scolds them gently, then laughs too. She hands them cloths, and they begin to wipe their arms and faces, scrubbing behind their ears. They smell faintly of onions and grass, and firewood, but the water changes that. Not completely, but just enough. Their father walks in, tired, his hands thick with soil. He rinses them slowly in the same bucket, rubs his knuckles, dips a cloth, wipes his neck. He sighs. There is no fancy bath, no soap, no towels, just a bucket, cloths, and warm voices. And yet in that moment, the house feels cleaner than any castle, because cleanliness wasn't about being spotless. It was about feeling well, feeling awake, or peaceful, or ready to. It was about wiping away the dead. And so, as the stars appear once more over the rooftops, and the air cools again, the village settles. Inside each home, someone wipes their hands, someone rinses their feet, someone brushes their hair, someone breathes in the scent of lavender. Before sleep, and in all these quiet acts, The same question lingers gently. Not shouted, not urgent, just quietly. How did people keep clean in medieval times? And now, slowly, gently, the answer begins to take shape. A soft fog has rolled in during the early morning, hugging the ground, and curling between the legs of sheep, as they graze slowly near the hedgerows. It makes the village feel quieter than usual. Even the birds seem unsure whether to sing just yet. Down one of the winding footpaths, near a willow tree whose branches hang low and curtain the stream below, a girl kneels by the water. She dips a wooden jug into the stream, watches the ripples form, then fills it carefully. The water here runs clear, over smooth stones, and it's cold this time of year. Cold enough to sting her fingers if she lets them linger. She doesn't. She stands, the jug heavy in her arms, and turns back toward the house. The walk is short, but she moves slowly, careful not to spill. This is the first water of the day, and it matters. Her mother is already inside, peeling roots near the fire. There's a small wooden bowl on the table, empty for now. The girl pours some of the stream water into it, then takes a cloth from a hook near the door. She dips it once, then gently presses it to her face. One cheek, then the other, her forehead, then her hands. The cloth is cold, and it makes her skin tingle. She wipes the back of her neck, then dries her face with her apron. No words are spoken. The ritual is simple, normal, a habit repeated every morning since she was old enough to lift the jug. This kind of washing wasn't about dirt you could see. It was about the feeling of being ready for work, for prayer, for the long day ahead. Even in the stillness of morning, cleanliness was a kind of awakening. In homes like this, small, rural, built of wood and earth, there wasn't space for large bathtubs or stone basins. Instead, people relied on what they had: buckets, jugs, cloths, hands, and they used them wisely. Water had to be fetched from streams, wells, or barrels that collected rain. It was carried, warmed, shared. Waste not just discouraged, but impossible. So when washing happened, it was done with care. Later in the day, the girl's brother will return from the fields, his hands dark with soil, his legs streaked with mud. He won't bathe, not today, but he will wash his hands, his arms, maybe even rinse his hair. A quick wipe, a cloth pressed behind his ear. The dirt won't disappear, but it will lessen, and that's enough. Farther away, in the larger town where stone streets wind between crowded buildings, the picture is similar, but louder. The streets here are muddy, even with the cobbles. Cartwheels grind through puddle, chickens scatter between feet, market stalls overflow with turnips, onions, dried fish, old cheese. The smells mix, drift, settle. But even here, people clean. Before opening their stalls, merchants wipe down their tables. Some use cloth soaked in vinegar, others sprinkle herbs, not for health, but for scent. A man selling meat lays down fresh leaves beneath his cart, not for decoration, but to catch the juices. When the day is done, he'll sweep it clean with a bundle of straw, then rinse it with water from the pump. The baker, whose shop smells of warm rye and roasted crust, always scrubs his wooden boards before laying out the next day's dough. His apprentice does the scrubbing. Water, cloth, elbow grease. No soap, just rhythm. Inside homes above the shops, women shake out linens. They brush clothes, they open shutters to let the air move. The wind is part of the cleaning. It carries out the dust, brings in the scent of rain, stone and chimney smoke. Let's follow one woman now. A seamstress, her fingers rough with calluses, her thread box worn smooth from years of use. She's just finished a large order, tunics for a local household. Her hands ache, so she soaks them in a bowl of warm water, steeped with chamomile. The scent rises as steam, fogging the window beside her. She sighs, leans back, watches the rain begin again. With her hands still in the water, she takes a cloth and begins wiping down her work table. It's covered in chalk dust, scraps of cloth, bent pins. The cloth squeaks slightly against the wood. She presses harder. This isn't for customers. No one will see. But it matters. A clean table feels better. Her tools rest more easily. Her thoughts move more clearly. Cleanliness as quiet order. Elsewhere in the same town, a young boy is sent to wash before supper. He grumbles, but goes. He walks to the corner of the courtyard, where a small barrel collects rainwater. He scoops it with a wooden bowl, pours it over his hands, rubs them together, then flings the water onto the stone path with a grin. But then he goes inside, and when his mother checks, his face is actually clean. His hands at least mostly. She nods. He smiles. The act of cleaning didn't always need to be perfect. It just needed to happen. People often say medieval folk didn't wash, that they lived in filth. But this is only partly true. Yes, life was dirtier then. But not because people didn't try. It was because dirt was everywhere. Life and labor happened close to the ground, close to animals, close to the weather. But effort that was everywhere too. Let's return to the monastery for a moment. The monks here move in silence through their daily tasks, sweeping, cooking, tending to the sick, copying manuscripts by candlelight. But before every prayer, they stop at the lavabo, a stone basin set in the wall, always trickling. They wash, always. A pause, hands in water, a breath, a reset. They do not speak, but the sound of water is constant. It calms. At the end of the hall, Brother Peter is folding cloths. Clean linen, rough but white, washed in boiling water, dried in the wind, pressed between These cloths are used in the infirmary, to wrap wounds, to cool foreheads, to soothe fevers. He smells one. It carries nothing but air. No soap, no herbs. Just the scent of sun-dried fabric. He folds it with care. Back in the village, the day begins to fade again. Dinner has been eaten, stew perhaps, or bread soaked in broth. The bowls are wiped clean with crusts. The spoons licked. The pots scraped. Water is poured into a basin. The mother rinses each dish. No detergent. No sponge. Just cloth. Hot water. And a rhythm passed down through time. After the dishes, the hands. She wipes each finger. The children hold theirs out one by one. The father washes his face with the leftover water. It's not warm anymore, but it's clean enough. Someone combs their hair. Someone changes their shirt. Someone wets a cloth with lavender water and places it near the bed. And so another evening folds itself gently towards sleep. You see, to keep clean in the Middle Ages wasn't to remove every speck of dust or every mark of labor. It was to remember the body, to care for it, to reset it again and again, to dip your fingers in cool water after a long day, to change into a linen shirt that smells of wind, to run a wooden comb through tangled hair, to wipe your face with cloth, and breath and time. None of these things happened with noise. They were slow, quiet, repeated, and together they built a life that might look rough from the outside, but was filled with small, soft acts of care. Even now, so many centuries later, we do the same. A splash of water before sleep, a brushing of teeth, a wiping of hands. The rituals stay with us. And in the hush of the evening, with the rain still whispering against the roof, the fire low, the cloth folded and drying near the hearth, the world feels clean again. Not spotless, but human, and whole. The wind is softer tonight, brushing across the rooftops, and drifting into open windows like a hand smoothing over bed sheets. The village has quieted. No carts rumble now. No footsteps echo down the worn paths. Only the low crackle of fire and the creak of wood in old beams remain. Inside a house near the edge of the woods, a woman unrolls a bundle of cloth. Inside are her washing things. Nothing fancy. A plain linen towel, a comb with missing teeth, a small bar of brown soap wrapped in oilskin. She lays them on the table near the hearth, one by one, smoothing the folds like she's done for years. She pours water from a kettle into a wide basin. The steam rises, and with it the scent of herbs she added earlier, dried lavender and a pinch of elderflower. Not much, just enough to soften the air. She begins with her hands. Her skin is cracked, her nails short. She worked in the garden today, pulling weeds, cutting herbs, scraping earth from between stones. The water is warm, and her hands relax as she dips them in. She scrubs gently with a cloth, rubbing along her knuckles under her nails, up her forearms. When she finishes, she dries them slowly, using the same towel she always does, a thin piece of flax cloth, passed down from her mother. The fabric is soft from age. She doesn't speak. No one is awake to hear her, but she smiles a little as she washes. The house is warm, the night is kind, and this act is something she can control. She dips the cloth again, wipes her neck, her face, behind her ears, not to impress, not for anyone, just for herself. In many medieval homes, this was the shape of cleanliness. Not big gestures, but small, steady ones. A cloth dipped in warm water, a few herbs, a familiar bowl. Not a bath, but a moment. Even in wealthier homes, the habits were not so different, just layered with more detail. Let's move now to a manor house, nestled beside a quiet lake, where the lady of the house is preparing for sleep. Her chambermaid has brought up water in a polished brass ewer, poured it into a wide ceramic bowl painted with blue flowers. The lady sits at her dressing table, gently brushing out her hair. The comb is ivory, the brush is boar bristle. Her hands are steady, her motions slow. She looks into the mirror, but not with judgment, only familiarity. After brushing, she uses rose water on her face, a cloth dipped and pressed. She blots gently at her cheeks, her forehead, her temples. She breathes in the scent. Behind her, the chambermaid folds the lady's day dress and places it in a chest. A fresh linen sleeping gown is laid out on the bed, embroidered lightly with white thread. Everything is quiet. The candlelight flickers against the stone walls, casting long shadows. A breeze stirs the drapes. The room is still. The lady stands, removes her earrings, and places them in a small carved box. Then she slips into her nightgown and pulls a heavier wool cover over her shoulders. The bed waits, cool and clean. No one speaks. Cleanliness is silent here, a preparation not just for rest, but for beginning again. Across the countryside, far from the manor, in a much smaller home, with only one room, a boy dries his feet by the fire. He walked all day, delivering bread, helping in the fields, carrying water, and by evening the soles of his feet were dark with mud and dust. His grandmother handed him a basin when he came in, already filled with water she had warmed before dinner. He sat on the bench, rolled up his trousers, and soaked his feet. Now he's drying them, slowly, with an old towel that smells faintly of chamomile. She tells him stories as he works, quiet ones, about when she was young, about how she used to help her mother scrape soap from the pot, about how they'd rinse clothes in the river when it wasn't frozen, stomping them with bare feet while the dogs barked at passing ducks. She laughs softly at her own memories. He listens. The fire snaps. Outside, the rain begins again. Then she hands him a comb. Hair next, she says. Even if you don't like it. He does it, slowly, working out the knots. Not for beauty, for sleep. She watches. Please. Cleanliness as discipline, as comfort, as love. Let's go now into a city. The streets are narrow, the buildings tall and leaning inward. Above, laundry hangs like soft sails between windows. Below, the cobblestones glisten from the evening's rain. In one of the larger bathhouses, lanterns have been lit. The windows are fogged from within. It's later than usual, but a few patrons remain. A couple, husband and wife, sit beside each other in a wide wooden tub, water up to their chests, steam rising in rib. Their hands rest loosely on the edge of the tub. They aren't talking. Earlier they scrubbed their skin with rough cloth soaked in soapwort. She combed her hair and braided it loosely. He trimmed his nails with a small bone knife. They splashed water on each other. Now they are the bathhouse keeper comes by and places fresh towels on a nearby bench. He nods, says nothing. The fire burns low in the central hearth. There is a soft smell of mint. Someone must have brought a bundle in. and thrown it into their bath. It lingers in the air. The couple will leave soon, dress quietly, and return home. They will sleep deeply tonight, their muscles loose, their skin warm. The bathhouse closes not long after, and in the silence that follows, the steam fades. Even when bathhouses weren't available, whether due to illness, fear, cost, or distance, people still found ways to wash. One popular method was the sponge bath. A bowl, a cloth, some warm water, and patience. People would begin at the hands, then the face, then the arms, then the chest. Each part cleaned in turn, then dried. This was often done weekly, or before feast days, weddings, births, sometimes just before market day, sometimes not at all. But for those who practiced it, it was and on rare occasions there were full baths, great wooden tubs filled by servants or family members. Water was carried in pails, heated over fires, poured in one bucket at a time. The first to bathe had the cleanest water. The last, usually a child, often ended in lukewarm, murky pool. There's even a phrase that survives from this: don't throw the baby out with the bath water, because it wasn't unheard of for the water to be so dark by the end that you couldn't see who was in it. Strange, yes, but real. And yet even then, people valued the moment: to sit, to soak, to scrub, to be alone, or to be cared for. Even kings had their bath days. Charlemagne was said to enjoy bathing, and would soak while discussing politics. Queen Eleanor of Aquitaine reportedly traveled with her own bath gear. A luxury, yes, but proof of how seriously even royalty took cleanliness. In noble courts, bathing could be a ceremony, with rose petals, milk, oil, attendants, laughter. But the rhythm of water touching skin was the same, high or low, rich or poor. Back in the village, a little boy sits with his grandfather. They've both been outside all day, and their faces are streaked with dirt. The grandfather pours water into a bowl, dips a cloth, and begins to clean the boy's face. The boy squirms at first. The water is cold, but the cloth is soft. The grandfather is slow, gentle, wiping carefully at each cheek, under the nose, behind the ears. The boy relaxes. The cloth moves like a feather. Then the boy takes the cloth and does the same for his grandfather. Less skilled, a little messier, but full of intention. They laugh. The bowl of water cools. The cloth is wrung out. The towel is folded again. Cleanliness, in the medieval world, was passed down this way, not through books or rules, but through hands, through cloth, through bowls, through time, through mothers teaching daughters, fathers rinsing feet, sisters braiding hair, brothers scrubbing behind ear. And so, while the tools may have been simple, a bar of soap, a brush, a jug, the purpose was deep: to feel lighter, to feel loved, to feel like yourself again. As the candle burns low and the fire shrinks into coals, the village fades back into sleep, and the cloths are hung by the door. The bowls are emptied, the combs laid flat, and the quiet answer of how people kept clean in a world with little floats, softly in the dark, like steam from a warm bath in a wooden room, filled with herbs and thyme. The morning mist hasn't lifted yet. It hangs low over the fields like a quiet curtain, moving slowly between rows of barley, and along the ridgelines of rooftops. The dew has collected in the tall grass, and even the chickens hesitate before stepping out of the coop, as though the stillness is something sacred. A woman in her late 30s steps out into the yard, carrying a large wooden bowl. She sets it gently on the low bench near the door. Steam rises from it, faint, curling like breath into the cold air. She wipes her hands on her apron, ties her hair back with a piece of cloth, and begins her morning cleaning. Not of the house that will come later, but of herself. She dips a cloth in the bowl, and begins wiping her arms, slow circles from wrist to elbow, then up to the shoulder. The water is infused with a handful of mint and sage she boiled the night before. It smells fresh, green, and sharp in the air. She switches arms, then pats her face. Her skin is tired from the sun, and the cloth is warm in a comforting way. Not scalding. She presses it to her cheeks, then beneath her chin. There is no mirror. She doesn't need one. Her body tells her when she feels clean. The memory of dirt is gone. And that's enough. Not far away, at the riverbank just beyond the tree line, another scene unfolds. A man is rinsing a shirt in the cold current, slapping it lightly against a rock, watching the soap bubbles drift downriver. His soap is simple, made from tallow and lye, cut into a square bar and wrapped in cloth to keep it from breaking. He's not alone. A few others stand nearby, scrubbing trousers or woolen tunics. They speak softly, if at all. The sound of water over stones fills the space between them. Afterward, they will carry their wet clothes home in baskets or wrapped in cloaks. The sun will dry them. The wind will soften them. And for a little while everything will feel new. In many towns, communal wash areas like this were common. Sometimes near rivers, sometimes beside public fountains, sometimes in long wooden washhouses built over water. People gathered there not just to clean, but to talk, to exchange news, to share complaints, recipes, stories. Washing wasn't a chore. It was a moment, a pause in the day, a kind of breath. Let's walk now to a larger village, one with stone-paved streets, and market stalls lined with dyed cloth and bundles of onions, and apples stacked in neat piles. There, behind the apothecary's shop, a woman prepares a mixture of herbs for her own washing. She crushes lavender, marjoram, and rosemary with a pestle, adds hot water, and lets it steep. The scent is earthy and strong. She pours it through a linen cloth into a bowl, then uses it to rinse her hair. She doesn't scrub, just lets the water run through slowly, lifting dust, oil and the faint smoke of the fire she tends daily. When she's done, she wraps her hair in a dry cloth and sits by the open window, letting the breeze do the rest. There is no hurry. Cleanliness for her is not just about washing away dirt. It's about resetting the senses, returning to herself. Elsewhere in the same village, a man is shaving with a blade, so sharp it could cut bread in half. He sits near a mirror made of polished metal. Not perfect, but good enough to see his face. He dips his blade in warm water, runs it along his cheek, then wipes the blade on a strip of cloth. Shaving wasn't an everyday thing, even in the city, but for some, it was part of staying clean. Not just the absence of hair, but the practice itself. Some used lard as shaving cream, others a bit of soap. Afterward, the face was rinsed with cold water, patted dry with whatever cloth was closest. It wasn't a perfect shave, but it felt right, smooth, new. In the background of these scenes, one thing remains constant: the role of water. Whether in a basin, a stream, a bucket, a barrel, or a shallow tub, water moved through the rhythms of life like breath through the body. It was fetched, heated, poured, shared, blessed. In churches, water meant purity. In kitchens, it meant cleanliness. In sick rooms, it meant healing. And at the end of each day, it meant peace. Even when water was scarce, people found ways to use it wisely. In dry seasons, washing was reduced, but not forgotten. Clothes were brushed, beaten with paddles to remove dust, aired in the sun. Hair was combed, skin wiped with cloth dampened, only slightly. Some used vinegar mixed with herbs to cleanse the skin, without needing full baths. Others used sand or fine ash to scrub their hands. Gritty, but effective. It was never about perfection. It was about balance. Feeling in harmony with the body, the home, the world. Let's return to a small farmstead at the end of a long track where two brothers live together. They're quiet men, not monks, but close to it. They farm, they keep bees, they mend things. Today is bath day. They've been heating water in a great pot since morning. One carries it inside in shifts, pouring it carefully into a wide wooden tub set near the fire. The tub is old, patched in two places with resin and rope. It leaks a little, but not much. The older brother bathes first. He undresses slowly, lowering himself into the steaming water with a groan of relief. He washes his arms, then his neck, then his chest. His brother waits, turning away politely. When the first is done, he steps out, dries with a thick linen cloth, and sits near the fire. The second brother enters the tub after, adding a bit more hot water first. They say little, just sighs and the sound of shifting wood. Afterward, the water is thrown outside. The tub is rinsed, The cloths are hung to dry. The house smells faintly of steam and that night, both brothers sleep more deeply than usual. Baths, when they happened, were not rushed. They were entire events, planned, prepared, cleaned up after. They weren't frequent, but they were memorable. Even in cities, people would schedule baths alone or at the bathhouse. Some people preferred morning, others, evening. Some added oils or herbs. Others brought music or company. But always, there was the same sense of reset, a wiping away of the day. In times of sickness or childbirth, washing became sacred. Midwives would bathe mothers gently after labor. Water was warmed, then cooled to the right temperature. Cloths, soaked and wrung out. Skin wiped, hair brushed, sheets changed. It was a ritual of care, tender, careful. The same was done for the dying. Before death, or just after, the body was washed, cleaned not only for appearance, but for dignity. Arms, legs, face, hands. Oils were sometimes rubbed into the skin. Clean garments put on. A final brushing of hair. Cleanliness at the end became something deeper than habit. It became part of how people said goodbye. And so from birth to death, through meals, prayers, marriages, feasts, winters and wars, people found ways to wash, sometimes elaborate, sometimes improvised, but always meaningful. Because in the quiet repetition of washing, the warm cloth, the cool water, the soft towel, people remembered themselves, remembered their shape, their place, their breath. And as this part of the story closes, the cloths are folded once more, the combs set down, the basins empty, the hair brushed back, and in the hush of the night, the same gentle rhythm continues. The morning light is slower than usual today. It slips in behind a thin veil of clouds, spreading across the village like a soft blanket. Roosters crow, but their voices seem gentler, as though the whole countryside has agreed to start the day with less hurry. In a narrow stone cottage, tucked between two tall hedges, a young woman kneels beside a bucket of warm water. Her hands move in quiet, careful circles over a child's shirt, linen stained slightly from yesterday's meal of greens and gravy. She's not in a rush. There's a rhythm to this kind of washing, a silent pulse in the way the cloth dips and wrings and stretches, then returns to the water again. The soap is homemade, its scent faint but pleasant. Tallow boiled with ash and rainwater, shaped into small round cakes and left to cure for weeks. Her daughter plays nearby, sorting pebbles into a little pile. Occasionally she looks up to watch her mother work. There is something calming in it, the way the hands never stop moving, and yet never seem to tire. After she scrubs the shirt, the woman shakes it once, then hangs it on a line strung between two poles in the yard. It flutters slightly in the wind. This is how most medieval people cleaned their clothes. Not every day, but regularly enough to keep them wearable, comfortable and pleasant to wear again. The underclothes were always washed more often than the outer ones. Tunics could be brushed and aired. Linen shifts, in direct contact with the skin, needed more water, more care. Laundry days were events, not chores to be done every day, but moments carved out of the week. Time was made for it, especially when the weather was kind. Some families used washboards made of smooth wood or carved stone. Others simply used their hands, pressing, rubbing, scrubbing. Many women would bring their washing to the river, where the current helped lift dirt from fabric. Others did it at home, beside the fire. In towns, washerwomen often worked as professionals. They took in clothes from wealthier families, nobles, merchants, clergy, and cleaned them in public washhouses, or at communal troughs. It was hard work, heavy, wet, cold, but it was valued. A nobleman's reputation could suffer if his linens were stained or musty. A bishop was expected to wear spotless robes. A merchant might lose respect if his cloak smelled of mildew. So people paid for cleanliness, even if they didn't always understand hygiene in the modern sense. They recognized the power of a clean appearance. Let's walk now to the back of a carpenter's shop. The man inside is sanding a wooden stool, sawdust collecting in the folds of his tunic. His hands are thick with splinters, resin, and wood oil. When he finishes the leg of the stool, He puts down the tool and steps outside to the rain barrel. He scoops a ladle full of water and pours it over his hands. The water is cool, and he hisses softly as it hits a cut on his palm. He scrubs his hands with sand. Yes, actual sand. Then rinses again. This kind of rough cleaning was common among tradesmen. Sand, ash, and vinegar all served as natural scrubbing agents. They weren't gentle, but they worked, especially for cleaning off tar, pitch, blood or grease. Inside his shop there's a rag used only for drying. It hangs from a hook near the door. He wipes his hands, then returns to work. Not all cleaning was about water. Much of it, especially in colder months, was done dry. Let's imagine a young woman who works in a kitchen. She wears a heavy apron. Her sleeves are rolled. Her hair is covered with a linen cap. By the end of each day, she smells of herbs, smoke, and animal fat. She can't bathe every evening. There's not enough time nor water, so she wipes herself with dry cloth. Sometimes she sprinkles her underarms with ground rosemary or sage. It helps with odor. Sometimes she rubs vinegar on her neck and wrists. She brushes her hair out each night before bed. Not for style but to remove bits of ash or flour. She changes her underlayer every 3 or 4 days. When she does, she hangs the used one near the fire to dry out before washing it on the weekend. It's not perfect, but it's clean enough, and that phrase, clean enough, was what most medieval people lived by. It wasn't about sparkle or scent. It was about feeling presentable, healthy, comfortable, able to move through the world with dignity. Even in monasteries, where silence and routine shaped every hour, cleanliness was more practical than perfection. A monk might wash his feet every other day, his face every morning, and his whole body only once every 2 weeks. But each act was done with care. Each basin was filled with intention. Each cloth wrung out, folded, hung to dry. Let's return to one of those monasteries now. Brother Matthew is in charge of caring for the infirmary. It's a small room lined with straw beds, clean linen, and a large wooden chest filled with herbs. He prepares a wash for one of the sick men, a mixture of chamomile and yarrow, steeped in warm water. He soaks a cloth and presses it to the man's forehead. The man doesn't speak, but his eyes flutter and his breathing slows. The scent of the herbs calms him. Brother Matthew changes the cloth, then begins to wipe the man's arms and hands. There is no soap, just water and time. It's not a cure, but it's a kindness, and in this place, that is enough. Later, Brother Matthew will wash the cloths in a basin behind the chapel. He'll hang them on a line strung between 2 fig trees. The sun will dry them, the wind will carry away the sickness, and tomorrow he'll start again. Cleanliness in care was universal, from the home to the battlefield, from the birthing chamber to the deathbed. Let's move now to a noble house preparing for a wedding. The bride-to-be sits in a warm room, filled with flowers and fresh linen. A basin of milk and water has been brought to her, along with a bundle of herbs tied with ribbon. She washes her arms and shoulders with the herb bundle, then rinses with rose water. Her maid brushes her hair for what seems like hours-long gentle strokes that smell of beeswax and elderflower. She wears a gown of pale blue. Her underlayer is freshly laundered. Her shoes have been scrubbed, her nails trimmed, her face wiped clean. She doesn't wear perfume, but she carries the scent of lavender, woven into her sleeves. For a day like this, everything must feel new. But the habits that brought her here, the daily washing, the weekly bath, the clean shift, the warm cloth, are no different from the habits of the woman in the cottage or the monk in the chapel, because in all these homes, large and small, cleanliness meant the same thing, being ready, not only for events, but for life itself. Let's visit the home of an older man. Now, he lives alone in a small hut at the edge of the forest. His hands are gnarled from decades of chopping wood. His beard is white. His eyes. Every morning he walks down to the stream with a bar of soap in his pouch. He finds his rock, the same one every time, and kneels. He washes his face, then his hands. Sometimes he bathes fully, especially in summer. He dries off with a cloth that he lays over a warm stone while he washes. No one sees him. No one needs to. He doesn't do it for them. He does it because he feels better after. And that perhaps is the truest thing about cleanliness in the medieval world. It was private, internal, steady. People didn't always talk about it, but they lived it in the way they wiped their hands after meals, rinsed their faces before prayer, changed their shirts before Sunday Mass, or combed their hair before sleep. It was a rhythm, not a rule, and in that rhythm, people found a kind of quiet dignity. So now, as the day fades once more, and the washing cloths are hung to dry, and the basins are emptied, and the towels are folded, we return again to the stillness, and the question, how did people keep clean, becomes softer, gentle, because the answer is no longer just about tools or materials. It's about intention, the hand reaching for the cloth, the breath before the wash, the silence as the hair is brushed. It was never about perfection, it was always about presence. The moon is nearly full tonight, hanging low over the fields like a pale lantern. Its light rests softly on rooftops, turns puddles silver, and touches the tops of hedges with just enough brightness to show their shape. Somewhere far down a narrow path that winds away from the village, two women walk side by side, each carrying a bucket. They speak little. The sound of water inside the buckets sways gently as they move. Splash, slosh, step, pause. They've been to the stream. The path back is lined with bramble and wildflowers, and the air smells faintly of wet leaves and something warm. Maybe peat from the fires in town, or the last blooms of summer. Their steps are steady. The water is for washing. They reach their cottage, ducking under the low lintel, and setting the buckets near the hearth. One of them pulls a stool closer to the fire. The other kneels, and begins unrolling a cloth bundle. Clean linen squares, a small cake of homemade soap, and a wooden brush with soft bristles. This is not bath night. That was last week. Tonight is just for the little things. They each take turns soaking cloths in the warmed water, wiping faces, necks, arms. The soap is used sparingly. It stings the skin if left too long. A few drops of rosemary oil are added to the second bucket. It lifts the smell of smoke from their sleeves. The room is silent, but for the crackle of firewood and the quiet drip of cloths being wrung out. Later, they'll brush their hair, braid it, change into clean shifts, and sit by the fire with a small bowl of soup between them. No one else will see them, but they'll go to bed clean. They'll sleep deeper for it. Evenings like this were common throughout the medieval world. Not full baths, but what some called a partial cleansing. Hands, face, feet, and any part that felt heavy with the day. Clean enough to rest. Clean enough to wake feeling lighter. Let's follow that idea now. The idea of clean enough, into a castle kitchen just before dawn. The fire has already been lit. A boy no more than 12 carries a heavy pot across the stone floor and sets it down with a groan. The cook gives him a nod and tosses another log onto the fire. Before he starts chopping onions, the boy walks over to the washing area. A stone basin built into the wall, with a pitcher of water sitting beside it. He pours the water into the basin and dips his hands. No soap here, just cold water. He scrubs with his fingers, rubs his palms together, then dries on a rough towel hung nearby. That's enough. Hands washed, skin awake, ready. In this kitchen there's a rhythm. Clean before you touch the food, clean after. It's not about germs, they don't know about those yet. It's about respect, about ritual, about the quiet belief that clean hands make better bread. Across the courtyard, in the chamberlain's room, a servant pours water into a silver bowl for his master's morning wash. This man, older now, wakes slowly. He doesn't get out of bed right away. He sits for a while, eyes closed, breathing quietly in the morning hush. When he's ready, the servant hands him a linen cloth and helps him sit near the window. The bowl is shallow, but wide. The water is warm, scented faintly with orange peel and a touch of cinnamon. The man wipes his face, then his hands, then his neck. He breathes in the scent and nods once, eyes still mostly closed. This was part of many nobles' routines. A morning wash before dressing, before eating, before anything else. No one expected them to bathe every day, but to begin clean, that mattered. Elsewhere in the castle, a lady sits at her dressing table. Her maid brushes out her hair, long, dark, full of sleep. They don't speak, the brushing is enough. Later, she'll rinse her hands in rose water and her feet in cool spring water, carried up in a copper jug. A cloth will be pressed to her temples, her nightgown will be folded, her skin will feel soft. That is the shape of cleanliness in this world. Not constant, but not grand but real. Let's leave the castle now, and walk through the village streets as they begin to stir. Doors open one by one, curtains are pulled back, wood is stacked by hearths, and small washings begin again. At one door a child pours water over her mother's hand. At another, a man wipes soot from his arms before heading to work. At another still, a girl dips a comb in vinegar and runs it through her brother's hair, section by section, looking for lice. Yes, lice. It was common in medieval times, but it was not ignored. People combed, they cleaned their bedding, they aired their clothing, they used lavender, rosemary, and wormwood, not just for smell, but because they believed these herbs kept the little creatures away. They didn't always succeed, but they tried. Let's look now at a different kind of cleaning. Not of the body, but of what touches the body. A laundress at a city inn is boiling sheets over a fire. The pot is huge, blackened from years of use. She stirs the linens with a wooden pole, watching as the bubbles rise and pop. She's added soap root, some lye, and a pinch of thyme to mask the stronger smells. Once boiled, she'll wring them out, rinse them twice in cool water, then hang them over the courtyard lines to dry. The sun will do the rest, bleaching, airing, freshening. Clean sheets were rare, but precious. In many households they were changed only every 2 or 3 weeks. In inns, more often, if business was good. To sleep in clean linen was a small joy, even if the bed was straw, even if the room was shared. Back in a cottage, an old man sharpens his razor. He doesn't shave often, but today, he feels the need. He warms his face with a cloth soaked in water from the kettle. He lathers his cheeks with a soap made from goat tallow and pine ash. He scrapes slowly, carefully. Each stroke is deliberate, each wipe of the blade, each rinse of the cloth, done with thought. He finishes, pats his face dry, and looks at his reflection in a bowl of still water. He nods, just once. This is what cleanliness meant to many. Not glamour, not vanity, but care, steadiness, intention. Let's go now to a sick room. A young woman lies in bed, feverish. Her mother kneels beside her, dipping a cloth into water cooled with snow and peppermint. She presses it to her daughter's forehead, then lifts the blanket to wipe her arms and chest. The girl stirs, her breath slows, the cloth is wrung out again, dipped, pressed, over and over. This is the quiet cleansing of illness, where each touch is more than physical. It's a comfort, a promise, a ritual of love. Outside the room, snow begins to fall, the first of the season. It settles on rooftops, clings to bare branches, hushes the sound of the town. Inside, people will gather their cloths, their bowls, their brushes. They'll boil water, hang clothes to dry by the hearth, rub their hands with warmed vinegar. And though they may not see it this way, they are performing the same acts as the kings, the monks, the nobles, the beggar. They are washing away what they can. They are preparing for what comes next. And so, as another day fades and the light becomes soft again, the combs are cleaned, the towels folded, the tubs emptied, the hair smoothed back. The small answer continues, quiet and certain. This is how they kept clean. This is how they stayed whole. It's cold tonight, a different kind of cold, one that seeps through the cracks in the shutters and sits still in the corners of every room. Even the fire, though it burns steadily, can't quite chase it away. You can feel it in your breath, and in the way people move, slower, with heavy layers and quiet steps. But inside the small homes and winding cottages, there are rituals that warm the body, even when the air doesn't. In one cottage, just beside the sheep pasture, a father is helping his son wash before bed. They sit near the hearth, shoulders wrapped in wool. A bucket of warm water rests between them, and steam curls upward into the flickering candlelight. The boy dips a cloth and wipes his arms, his cheeks, behind his ears. The father watches, then reaches for the cloth and carefully washes the boy's feet, one, then the other. It's not dramatic, just quiet care. The father doesn't speak much. He doesn't need to. The warmth of the water and the gentleness of his hands say enough. In cold months, washing changed. Full baths were rare. Water froze in the buckets. Soap hardened. But people didn't stop. They adapted. They warmed water over fires. Washed in sections. Face, hands, feet. They used oils to keep the skin from cracking. Animal fat, sometimes, or beeswax, mixed with herbs. It wasn't indulgent. It was survival. A clean, dry body stayed warmer. And illness found fewer openings in clean skin. Let's travel now to a merchant's house in the city. The family here is not rich, but they're doing well. They own a small shop and live above it, in a home with windows made of oiled parchment and walls built with careful stone. In the main room, the mother is preparing for her weekly cleaning. She has a basin of warm water, a coarse cloth, a small pot of vinegar infused with thyme, and a dried orange peel she keeps in a pouch. One by one, she dips the cloth and wipes her body, neck, chest, underarms, arms, legs. The vinegar stings slightly, but it lifts the weariness of the day. When she's done, she combs her hair, oils her scalp with almond oil, and braids it back. Her husband does the same. Not the braiding, but the wiping and oiling. They do it side by side, in silence. Their children sleep in the corner, already washed. A cloth soaked in rose water rests beside the baby's cradle. These were the evenings many people lived for. Not feasts, not markets, but the soft, steady habits that made them feel human again. Elsewhere in the city, a young scribe stretches his sore hands. He's been copying manuscripts all day, long hours, bent over a wooden desk, his eyes strained from candlelight, his fingertips stained with ink. Before sleep, he prepares a hand soak. It's simple: warm water, sage, salt. He dips his hands in and lets them rest. Then with a soft brush, he scrubs under his fingernails, wipes the ink from his knuckles, and flexes his fingers. He doesn't wash his whole body tonight, but this part, his hands feel reborn. Cleanliness wasn't just about dirt. It was about touch, about recovery. In homes, in churches, in workshops, people touched water with intention. Let's visit the wash house now. It's a large wooden structure, near the town's edge, built over a stream that feeds the troughs inside. There are no walls, just a slanted roof, and low partitions. The air is cold, but the water runs strong. Several women kneel on benches, washing linen by hand. They laugh, complain, sing softly. Their hands are red from the cold, their sleeves soaked, but their movements are practiced. One uses soap root, a plant that foams when crushed. Another has soft soap, made from olive oil and lye. It smells faintly sweet, almost floral. They scrub, rinse, wring, repeat. Washing clothes was an act of strength. Physically demanding, time-consuming, but also a way to cleanse more than just fabric. While the clothes dry on lines outside, the women sit near a small fire and dry their hands. They share bread, exchange stories, fold their cloths with practiced grace. Clean linen was one of the clearest signs of care in medieval times. Even when bodies weren't bathed often, fresh clothes made people feel renewed. Many believed that changing into clean underclothes was as good as a bath. Let's move now to a quiet monastery high in the hills. The monks here follow a strict routine. Every morning, after the first bell, they enter the cloister and stop at the washing fountain. It's made of stone, carved centuries ago, fed by a natural spring. The water is always cold, but always clean. Each monk washes his hands and face before entering the chapel. Not rushed, not dramatic, just a few splashes. A moment of stillness. A bow of the head. Brother Elias, one of the older monks, has a cracked basin in his cell. Every night he soaks his feet, even in winter. He believes it keeps his mind clear. After soaking, he dries them with a linen cloth and rubs in rosemary oil, a habit he learned as a boy. His father was a healer. The smell brings memories. He prays as he dries, then folds the cloth. Then cleanliness and prayer were often side by side, acts of respect for the body and the soul. Let's visit a shepherd now, sleeping out in the fields beneath the stars. He has no basin, no soap, but he carries a pouch of herbs and a cloth soaked in vinegar. He wrings out at the end of each day. He wipes his hands, his face, his feet, then he lies on his back, staring at the sky and breathes deeply. Even alone, even far from home, he carries the ritual with him. Now imagine a traveler arriving at an inn. He's dusty, tired, his boots caked with mud. The innkeeper gives him a room and a bowl of warm water. No questions, just hospitality. The man washes his hands, then his face, then drinks the last of the water and falls into bed. That bowl of water meant more than rest. It meant welcome. Cleanliness was everywhere. In inns, homes, monasteries, castles, and fields. Not always perfect, not always thorough, but always present. And often these rituals passed in silence. Washing hands before meals, brushing hair before bed, wiping faces after waking. A cloth a basin filled, a body remembered. So as the night deepens, and the air stills once more, and the candles grow short, the question drifts gently back again. How did people keep clean in the Middle Ages? Not by force, not by rule, but by rhythm, by touch, by quiet habit, by care. And in every home, as the water cools, and the cloths dry, and the hair is brushed one last time, the answer lingers in the silence. A hush has settled across the land, the kind that only happens in winter, when the snow has already fallen, and the world holds its breath. The trees are bare, the roads are quiet, even the animals move slower, more carefully, and from every chimney, a line of smoke curls up into the pale sky. Inside one small stone cottage, close to the edge of a frozen stream, the fire has been burning since before sunrise. It's the only heat in the house, and it's guarded carefully. Near the hearth, a woman dips a cloth into a pot of gently steaming water. She wrings it out once, folds it into a square, and presses it to her face. She doesn't move for a moment, just sits, breathes, feels the warmth against her skin. This is not a full bath. It's not even a long washing. It's simply how the day begins. In cold seasons, washing routines changed. People didn't have the luxury of pouring cold water over their heads, or stepping into rivers. Pipes didn't run. Hot water had to be carried and boiled. Everything took more time, more fuel, more thought, and yet people still washed. They used cloths dipped in warmed water, wiped their hands and faces, scrubbed their feet before bed. They used vinegar to freshen their underarms and herbs like thyme or rosemary to scent their hair or clothing. They used ashes to clean rough skin, sand to scrub, and if they had it, precious drops of oil to soften their hands after work. They did not skip these things. They adapted them. In one monastery tucked high into the cliffs, where the wind howled down stone corridors, the monks had developed a rule for winter washing. Once a week, they would gather in a chamber warmed by a single great hearth. One by one, they would step forward, remove their robes, and pour water over themselves with ladles carved from pine. The water had been warmed since before dawn. It was never enough for comfort, just enough to cleanse. They dried with coarse linen, redressed in silence, and returned to their work. The ceremony was not about being spotless. It was about honoring the body that served their prayers. It was about humility, about starting again. Let's go now to a small village on the border of two great forests. The air there is full of pine and wood smoke. The people live close to the land, cutting firewood, boiling sap, drying herbs in thick bunches above their hearth. In one home, A father and daughter prepare their wash. They've just returned from the woods. Their boots are soaked, their faces pink with cold. The daughter removes her gloves and flexes her fingers. She sets a small basin near the fire, pours water into it, then adds 2 leaves of dried mint. Her father peels off his coat and kneels beside her. Together they dip their cloths and wipe their faces. He hums as he works. She doesn't recognize the tune, but she listens anyway. When their skin is clean and dry, she takes a pinch of crushed juniper and rubs it into her palms. He does the same. It leaves behind a scent, sharp and forest-like. And that, they both agree, is better than smoke. In places like this, washing was not daily, but it was regular, predictable, built into the quiet rhythm of the week. Clothes were brushed with stiff brooms, then aired outside in the breeze. Even in winter, hair was braided to stay clean longer, then unbraided and brushed out by firelight. Even in the hardest months, the people made time. Let's travel farther now, to a city. Here, life is noisier. The streets are busy even in winter, filled with people wrapped in cloaks and shawls. Snow melts into slush. The stone roads are slippery. Horses clatter through the market square, but behind shuttered windows and heavy doors, the same care unfolds. In a small apothecary's shop, a woman mixes oils, rosemary, mint, and just a touch of lavender. She pours them into clay bottles and wraps them with waxed cloth. These will be sold to the wealthy, or given to those who can't afford them, if they arrive sick. Oils like these were used for both health and cleanliness. People rubbed them into their skin after washing, or placed a few drops into bath water, or applied them to linens and pillows to make sleeping more pleasant. Some believed the oils helped keep illness away. Others simply liked the scent. Upstairs, her husband wipes their son's face with a damp cloth. The boy frowns, tries to pull away, but the father makes it a game, dabbing the nose, the cheeks, the chin, naming each one like a character in a story. The boy laughs, and the cloth keeps moving. Elsewhere in the same city, in a larger house with 2 floors and a garden that grows no herbs, this time of year, a noblewoman steps into a bath. It has taken 6 servants to prepare. Buckets of water have been heated over the kitchen fires, poured into the copper-lined tub one after another. Rose petals float on the surface. A breeze moves through the high windows, but the room is warm. The lady closes her eyes. This is not a daily ritual. It happens only once every 2 weeks, maybe longer. But when it happens, it is treated with care. A cloth soaked in soap-scented water is passed over her arms, then her back, then her legs. Her maid moves slowly, whispering the names of the herbs mixed into the bath. Lemon balm, chamomile, hyssop. Afterward, the lady will be dried with heavy linen towels. Her hair will be combed for nearly an hour. She will dress in clean underlayers. She will smell of flowers. And for the rest of the day, she will feel new. Cleanliness in noble homes was not always frequent, but it was always intentional. Whether in bathhouses, private chambers, or through daily cloth wiping, the goal was not to shine. It was to renew. Let's step now into the home of a carpenter and his wife. Their cottage is filled with wood shavings and the scent of pine. In the evenings after the tools are put away, the wife gathers her cloths, one for her face, one for her hands, one for her feet. She warms the water over a small fire, and adds thyme she dried in summer. When it's ready, she dips the first cloth and begins her work. The husband sits nearby, running a comb through his beard. It has wood chips in it. He grimaces, but doesn't complain. He asks for one of the cloths. She hands him the one for hands. He cleans his palms slowly, carefully, then offers to do the dishes while she finishes her feet. She smiles. That's enough. Even in small acts like these, the idea of shared care runs deep. Washing was not only physical, it was emotional. It was how people restored not just their bodies, but their connections. Let's visit a young mother now, rocking her child to sleep. The baby has been cleaned already. A damp cloth, a dry towel, A fresh wrap. She smells faintly of rosemary and milk. The mother hums a song, one she barely remembers learning, and strokes the child's soft hair. In the corner of the room, the wash basin still sits, water cooling, cloth draped over the edge. It will be emptied in the morning. The cloths hung to dry by the fire. But for now, nothing moves. The washing is done. The baby sleeps. The mother somewhere far away, in a castle by the river, a knight kneels in a chapel before sleep. He has removed his armor, cleaned his blade, and now dips his hands into the font of holy water near the door. He touches his forehead, then his chest, not for cleanliness of body, but for soul. Even here, even now, washing has meaning. So let us return once more to the quiet question that runs like a thread through this story. How did people keep clean during medieval times? They did it with fire and water, with cloth and oil, with time and intention. They did it in rooms of stone, cottages of timber, tents of wool, and chapels of echoing silence. They did it every way they could, not perfectly, not always completely, but regularly, gently, thoughtfully. They did it with hands tired from work, with water warmed from smoke-darkened pots, with cloths patched and repatched, with herbs hung to dry in summer, saved for the cold, with fingers rubbed raw from scrubbing, and with patience, always patient. And so as another winter night wraps the village in stillness, and the fires burn lower, and the cloths are folded again beside the hearth, the story of how people kept clean continues, steady, silent and human. The sun is rising late again. It's that part of the year when light hesitates, a little slower to spill over the hills, a little colder as it touches the frost-laced rooftops. The village is quiet in this hour, caught between darkness and day. Smoke climbs from chimneys, steady and pale against the soft gray sky. Inside a thatched cottage near the edge of the woods, a man stirs from sleep. He sits on the edge of his straw-filled mattress, rubbing his hands together slowly. The cold seeps through the floor, but he doesn't. He listens first, to the wind outside, to the faint creak of the rafters, to the low crackle of embers still glowing in the hearth. Then, as he does every morning, he moves to the basin near the door. The water inside is cold, not icy but cold enough to wake the skin. He takes a cloth from the peg, dips it once, then begins to wipe his face. First the forehead, then his cheeks, then his eyes. He pauses after each pass, not from pain, but from habit. This is not something to rush. He wipes his neck, his chest, his hand, then wrings out the cloth, and hangs it to dry. For him this is not luxury. It's how he prepares for the day, a way to feel like the work ahead can be faced with a clear head and a steady heart. Throughout the medieval world, this kind of washing, simple, quiet, without fuss, was a normal part of life. Not everyone bathed often, not everyone had soap, but nearly everyone, in some way, practiced these smaller rituals of cleanliness. Let's walk down the muddy village lane now, to the home of a woman who takes in sewing. She's already awake, sitting beside the hearth with a pile of linen undergarments in her lap. Her hands move quickly, threading needles, stitching tears, smoothing wrinkle. A pot of water steams near the fire, and beside it rests a wooden bowl, filled with herbs, marjoram, lavender and a touch of mint. She'll use it soon. When she finishes mending for the morning, she sets the clothes aside and prepares her own wash. She adds the herbs to the water, waits a moment, then dips a cloth and begins. She starts with her arms, always her arms first, from elbow to wrist, then the hands. Her fingers are stained with ink and thread wax. She scrubs gently. Next is her neck, then her chest, then her face. There is no soap here, just warm water, scented herbs, and a cloth that's been patched more than once. But when she's done, she feels lighter, like something has been lifted. Not just dirt, but worry, tiredness, the weight of yesterday. This is what cleanliness often meant in those times. Not removal, but release. In a small chapel nearby, the priest begins his morning. He lights a candle, sprinkles water across the altar, washes his hands before touching the chalice, The water is not perfumed. It's just clean. Later, he'll visit a sick woman who hasn't been able to leave her bed for days. He'll bring a bottle of lavender water, dip a cloth, and gently wipe her forehead, her hands, her lips. She won't speak much, but she'll smile. Cleanliness wasn't just for the healthy, it was for everyone. Let's move now, through a cluster of homes, built close together, the kind of neighborhood where everyone hears everyone's business, but also where help is never far. A woman stands at her door, brushing out a wool cloak with stiff bristles. The breeze carries away the dust. She doesn't own many clothes. Few did, but she keeps them clean by brushing, airing, and wiping stains as soon as they appear. Behind her, her son is brushing his hair with a comb carved from bone. He winces, not because of the comb, but because he skipped this part yesterday, and now pays the price. Hair care was different back then. People didn't wash it often, but they took care of it in other ways. Brushing daily, using oils if they had them, rinsing with vinegar, or herbal infusions when water was available. Rosemary, nettle, sage, and chamomile were favorite. Sometimes rainwater was preferred, softer, gentler, easier on the hair. The boy finishes brushing, and hands the comb to his sister, who takes it without a word, and begins carefully parting her hair into 3 long sections. She braids it, then ties it with a cord. The comb goes back on its shelf. Always the same place, always ready. Let's visit now a traveling merchant. He stopped at an inn just outside the city. His cart parked under the lean-to beside the stables. He's been on the road for 3 days. Dusty, cold, tired. The innkeeper shows him to a small room, with straw on the floor, and a blanket that smells of smoke and rosemary. There's a basin of water on the table, a cloth beside it. The merchant says nothing, but the basin is the first thing he touches. He doesn't change clothes yet, doesn't eat, just washes. The cloth is stiff from old soap. The water is cool, but when he finishes, he looks in the small mirror hanging beside the door, and sees something better in the face, staring back. People on the road carried their own washing kits, small soap cakes, strips of linen, sometimes even herbal bundles tied with string. They knew the value of a clean face, especially before trade or negotiation. Let's pause now at a public fountain. In the center of the town square, water flows from a carved spout, shaped like a lion's mouth, or maybe a saint's hand. Children splash their hands in it. A woman fills her pail. A man rinses apples before placing them back in his cart. Nearby, a shoemaker crouches beside the stone, removing dirt from his boots with a rag. The fountain isn't a bathhouse. It isn't a washing room, but it's a source of cleanliness. Shared, understood. Many cities had fountains like these. They were built near markets, churches, and gathering places. They weren't just decorative. They were necessary. They made washing possible for those who couldn't afford servants, or bathtubs, or private wells. Even in the poorest quarters, people found water, found cloth, found time. Let's visit a noblewoman now, sitting in a window alcove with sunlight falling across her lap. She holds a small jar in one hand, a paste made from almonds, rosewater, and beeswax. It's soft, pale in color, lightly scented. She dips 2 fingers in and gently rubs the paste into her skin, her elbows, her hands, the backs of her arms. This is not cleaning in the usual sense, but it's care. Many wealthier women used creams and oils to maintain their skin, not for appearance alone, but for comfort. The wind was harsh. Soap could be drying, linen rubbed, oil softened. Some used milk baths, others steeped herbs, some simply wiped with warm water and perfumed cloths. Even queens, it said, had servants dedicated only to bathing and grooming, but the principles were the same: body, cloth, water, care. Let's return now to a village. Just before supper, a child sits on a bench, while his mother wipes his feet with a damp cloth. He kicks once, then stops. She smiles. He wiggles his toes and watches the steam rise. The cloth moves slowly, carefully, across his heels, his ankles, between each toe. This is not about appearance, it's about ritual. Clean feet before bed, clean hands before eating, clean shirts before Sunday. It's how people made order from dust, how they reset the body and the spirit. A few doors down, a man scrubs his table with vinegar. He wipes in long strokes, then tosses the rag over his shoulder. The table shines faintly in the candlelight. It smells sharp, clean. His wife brushes out their daughter's hair. His son wipes down the bench with another cloth. The house isn't spotless, but it's fresh, a place ready for sleep. And now, as the fire dims, and the shutters are closed, and the wind begins to move more softly across the fields, the last cloth is wrung out, the last basin emptied, the last braid tied, the last towel folded, and somewhere, in all of it, is the same gentle answer. They stayed clean through rhythm, through care, through repetition, not perfectly, but purposefully, and in those slow, steady acts of washing, wiping, brushing, rinsing, they found something more than hygiene. They found peace. The fields are quiet tonight. The frost has returned, not with a storm, but gently, a soft breath across the land. Each blade of grass has turned to glass. Each stone along the path gleams under moonlight. There's a hush over the village, not from fear, not from cold, but from the kind of stillness that follows many days of work, when even the trees seem to pause. Inside a barn near the southern edge of the village, a woman checks her goats. She moves with care. Her boots crunch gently on the straw. One of the goats lifts its head, but does not bleat. She runs a hand along its back, checking for burrs, then reaches for a small cloth in her coat pocket. She dips the cloth into a bucket of warm water she brought from the house, and gently wipes around the goat's eyes. Small gesture, a habit. She has always believed animals, like people, feel better when clean. It's not a belief many laugh at. Most understand it, even if they don't say it out loud. Back inside her home, her husband is preparing for bed. He sits on a stool near the fire, removing his boots slowly, placing them beside the hearth. His socks are stiff from wear. He peels them off, then reaches for a bowl of water. It's not warm anymore, but it's not cold either, just cool enough to sting at first, then settle. He dips one foot, then the other, lets them soak, then uses a small brush, the same one his father used, to scrub away the dirt. When he finishes, he dries them on a cloth that's been washed and dried dozens of times. It smells faintly of mint. He folds it, sets it aside, then pulls on a soft pair of linen socks, and lies back on the bench beside the fire. Tomorrow, he'll do it again, not because anyone demands it, but because it brings him peace. All across the village, in small corners and private spaces, these quiet acts unfold. A young girl carefully wipes the outside of a clay mug before setting it on a shelf. A man dips a comb into cider vinegar and runs it through his beard. An elderly woman sprinkles sage water over her sheets, believing it will ease her breathing. These things aren't done for show. They aren't seen, but they are known. There is a rhythm to this life, a pace shaped by the seasons, by the moon, by the body's own needs, and cleanliness, in all its humble forms, is woven into it. Let's walk to the village bathhouse now. It's not grand. It's a single room, built of timber and stone, with a vented roof and a series of long benches. There are no carved tiles, no gold leaf paintings, just steam, wood, and water. Tonight is bath night. The fire has been going for hours. The air inside is thick with heat. A large cauldron simmers in the corner, and people enter in shifts. Women first, then men, then children. Each person brings their own cloth, their own soap if they have it, their own towel. A girl sits on a bench, knees pulled up to her chest, steam rising around her. Her mother scrubs her back with a rag soaked in lavender water. Next to them, a grandmother pours a ladle of warm water over her own legs, then slowly, patiently, begins to wash her feet. No one rushes. No one talks loudly. The sound of water, the creak of benches, the gentle breath of steam, that is all. When the bath is done, they'll dress again, wrapping clean shifts over clean skin, walking home slowly through the fogged streets. They'll sleep deeper that night. For many communities, bathhouses were shared places. Not just for washing, but for resting, talking, listening, even healing. Some had steam rooms made with hot rocks and poured water. Others had tubs carved from wood, filled one bucket at a time. Some even had benches where people could sit while their hair was combed and treated with oils. Even where full baths were rare, these communal spaces made deep cleaning possible and joyful. Let's move now to a smaller home, where a father is teaching his son how to wash properly. They stand by a low wooden basin. The father dips the cloth, hands it to the boy. "Start with your face," he says softly. The boy obeys. The cloth is rough, but the water is warm. "Now your neck," the father continues. "Your arms. Don't forget behind the ears." They go slowly. The father doesn't correct, just guides. This is not just about washing, it's about teaching, about passing down a skill, a rhythm, a way of being. When the boy is done, he grins. His face is pink, his eyes are bright. "Good," the father says, folding the cloth. He doesn't need to say anything else. The smile is enough. Elsewhere, in a larger home, a woman prepares a basin for her guests. A traveler has arrived, dusty, hungry, weary. She doesn't ask where he's been, just brings water. A small cake of soap carved into a shape that once resembled a bird. The traveler washes his hands, his face, then eats. He says thank you, not with words, with the way he closes his eyes when he touches the cloth, with the sigh that follows. Clean water, clean hands. These were offerings, gifts, hospitality. Even when little was available, people gave what they could. Let's pause now, inside a small schoolhouse. A handful of children sit on low benches, their hands folded, listening to the teacher. Before lessons began, they each washed their hands at the trough outside, a row of clay pitchers, and a long wooden gutter that drained into the grass. The water wasn't warm, but it was clean. The teacher watched each one, not to scold, but to encourage. The washing, like the reading, was part of the lesson. Clean hands meant readiness, meant respect, meant attention. These habits began early. At home, children were taught how to comb their hair, wipe their faces, clean their fingernails. They helped with laundry, brushing clothes, folding cloth. They learned which herbs smelled nice, which ones stung, which ones kept the fleas away. Let's visit now a widow who lives alone. She no longer has the strength to carry buckets or boil large pots, but she still washes. She keeps a small cloth in her apron, and every morning she pours a little water into a shallow dish and wipes her face, her hands, her neck. Once a week, her niece visits and helps her wash her hair, brushing first, then pouring warmed water slowly from a jug. The old woman hums a tune from her childhood. "I used to hate baths," she says. Her niece laughs. "I still do, but when the hair is clean and dry, and braided," they both smile. Cleanliness, in these moments, is about comfort, about dignity, about care. It's not always full baths or fragrant oils. Often, it's just a clean cloth, a warm hand, a little time. And so as we walk through this world, through small kitchens, steam-filled bathhouses, candle-lit bedrooms, and chilly courtyards, we keep seeing the same thing. Not grand gesture, not perfect rituals, but steady ones. The rinsing of hands before bread, the wiping of faces after prayer, the brushing of hair before braiding, the soaking of feet after walking, the folding of linen at day's end. These were the pieces of cleanliness. Not one act, but many. Not rare but repeated. Not loud but lasting. And as night falls again, soft and slow, and the wind settles in the branches, the last basin cools, the last cloth dries, the last braid is tied, the last breath deepens. And still, the answer lingers. This is how they kept clean. And this is how they stayed human. The stars are out tonight, not scattered or shy, but full, thick, and close, as though the sky itself has lowered toward the earth. The clouds are gone, the wind has slowed, and in the quiet you can almost hear the breath of the land. Slow, even, ancient. Below this calm sky, a candle flickers in a window. Inside, a man wipes his hands with a cloth. Not hurried, not distracted, just present. One finger at a time, across the knuckles, along the palm. He does this every night before bed. The water he used came from a rain barrel, boiled earlier and cooled by the hearth. It smells faintly of lemon balm, dried in summer, stored in a jar, crumbled into the basin a few hours ago. This is his habit. It has been for years. In the next room, his wife brushes her hair. 100 strokes, then a braid, then a scarf. Her daughter counts each stroke, even though she always forgets the number. What matters isn't counting, it's the rhythm. This is a clean house, not spotless, not perfect, but lived in with care. That kind of quiet order that settles the mind. Tomorrow is washing day. Not just bodies, linens too. Let's move now into a neighboring home, where 2 boys are helping their grandmother fill a tub. Not for bathing, for soaking clothes. The tub is made of wood, its sides bound with metal rings. It leaks a little, but only near the bottom. They line it with an old blanket, pour in buckets of warm water, and add ashes from the hearth. The grandmother stirs the mixture with a paddle, then drops in a pile of shirts, shifts, and underthings. She presses them down, lets them soak, and hums. The boys watch. One is bored, the other is fascinated. Ash water, lye is the closest thing to soap many villagers could make. It was strong, almost harsh, but it worked. Later the clothes would be lifted out, wrung by hand, rinsed in cold water, and hung in the wind. Washing linen was part of staying clean, not just for appearance, but because fresh cloth against the skin felt like new breath. Clean linen helped reduce itching, heat rashes, sores. It was not luxury, it was health. And when the clean shirts were pulled over tired shoulders, the change was visible, not just in body, but in spirit. Let's walk now to a monastery garden. It's quiet here, lined with herbs, chamomile, sage, rosemary, lavender, mint. A monk kneels with a small knife, trimming dried flower heads into a pouch. He will use them for washing, or perhaps someone else will. Sometimes these herbs are steeped in vinegar, then used to wipe wounds. Other times, they're added to water and used for hair. A few steps away, another monk is preparing the lavatorium, the stone sink used before meals. He fills the basin, places clean towels on a shelf above, and checks the water spout. It's not a chore, it's a part of prayer. Clean hands before eating, clean hearts before speaking. Cleanliness here is not a sign of pride, it's a sign of readiness. Now we step inside a castle, far from the village, far from the quiet of the field. Even here, in stone rooms warmed by fire and heavy with tapestries, people sought the same comforts. The lord of the castle has just returned from hunting. His boots are muddy, his hands are covered in dust and dried blood from the forest. Before he speaks to anyone, before he eats, he sits down and washes. A servant brings a basin, a cloth, a cake of soap wrapped in linen. The lord dips his hands, scrubs his fingers, and dries them with slow care. Later, he will bathe in a wooden tub filled with water from the kitchen. His hair will be combed, his skin wiped with scented cloths. But this first act, washing the hands, is the one he never skips. It is the most human gesture, the reset. Elsewhere in the same castle, a young maid prepares scented cloths for the lady's chamber. She soaks them in rose water, wrings them out, folds them tightly, and places them near the bed. The lady uses them to wipe her neck and arms before sleep. Not every night, but on nights like this, when the air feels too still, when the candles burn too low. Cleanliness in noble houses was sometimes ritual, sometimes comfort, sometimes simply the wish to feel renewed before rest. Let's visit a barber surgeon now, in a town not far from the river. His shop smells of herbs and metal. He sharpens razors by candlelight, wipes them with cloth soaked in vinegar, and lines them neatly in a row. A young man sits on the stool. He's here for a haircut, but also for a face wash. The barber mixes a paste from dried soapwort and rainwater, rubs it onto the man's cheeks, then wipes it away with a soft rag. The young man sighs, his shoulders drop. Even something so small can quiet the mind. Clean faces, clean necks, clean scalps. These were signs of pride, of care, of not giving in to the weariness of the world. Now imagine a woman brushing ashes from her hearth, tossing the softest cinders into a bucket for tomorrow's soap mix. She hums to herself, wipes her hands on a cloth, and sets the bucket beside the door. She's preparing, not for guests, not for show, but for the daily rhythm, for herself. She does this every week, not perfectly, but faithfully. We return now to a cottage where an old man soaks his feet. The water is hot, hotter than he usually prefers, but tonight, the bones ache. He adds a handful of thyme, leans back, and breathes. He remembers his father doing the same. He remembers the smell, the sting, the silence. This is not something he talks about, but it is something he keeps. Across the fields, in a home where 3 generations live under one roof, a mother wipes her daughter's face before bed. The girl complains, wriggles, smiles, but she lets it happen. Tomorrow it will be her turn, wiping her little brother's cheeks, helping to wash the breakfast bowls, folding the clean linen on the drying line. It's all the same rhythm, passed down without needing words. Let's return briefly to the stream. A young boy splashes water onto his hand. He's been playing in the mud, and now scrubs his fingers with sand, then rinses again. No one told him to. He just remembers. He dries his hands on a patch of grass, then runs home. Even the youngest understood. Clean hands before meals, clean face before church, clean shift on washing day. And now as the moon rises higher, and the breath of night deepens, we return to the same simple truth. They didn't have showers, they didn't have shampoos, but they had cloth, they had water, they had care. They used ash, vinegar, herbs, salt, lard and soap root. They brushed hair, combed beards, scrubbed feet, changed linen, braided hair, wiped fingers, rinsed faces. And in all these things, not in perfection, but in rhythm, they stayed clean. The old ways were slow, but they were steady, and for many that was enough. So as the last candle burns low, and the wind brushes softly across the window panes, and the cloths hang drying above the hearth, the water cools, the hands rest, the night begins, and the story continues. The morning sky is slow to change. A faint blue creeps across the hills, softening the edges of the trees. A rooster calls once, a door creaks open, and the village begins to stir. Not all at once, but in a quiet ripple, one home after another. In the home of a tanner, the day starts with warmth, not comfort, warmth from a fire built long before the others awoke. The air smells of wet hide, ash, and something sharp, lime maybe, or the faint sting of tannins from oak bark. He has work ahead of him, the kind of work that stains the skin and lingers in the fingernail. But even here, in this hard place, the tanner washes. He keeps a bowl of salt water by the door. It's not to scrub the deep stains, those take days, but to freshen his hands before breakfast. He dips them in, rubs his palms together, and dries them on a thick cloth that hangs from a peg. This cloth has seen many mornings, but it's clean enough. His wife in the next room is brushing their daughter's hair, long, dark, and easily tangled. It takes patience. She starts at the ends, careful not to pull, and works her way up. The girl sits still, eyes half closed. She likes this part of the day, the warmth, the quiet, the feeling of her mother's hand. When the brushing is done, her mother braids the hair, then gently wipes the girl's face with a damp cloth that smells like marjoram. She hums as she works. This home, like so many, does not have extra. No silver, no fine soaps, no bathtubs with heated stones. But it has cloths, it has time, it has rhythm. That's enough. Across the village, in a home made of wattle and daub, a boy scrubs a wooden spoon with sand and water. His mother watches, correcting only once. Use both hands, she says. He nods, dips the spoon again, and scrubs harder. They don't have soap for everything, so they use what the earth gives. Fine sand for scrubbing, ashes for grease, sour milk for stains. It works if used with care. Once clean, the spoon is placed on a rack beside a row of washed cups. Each item has its place. Each is dried with a square of linen. The same square, used day after day, always rinsed and hung to dry above the fire. Even tools deserved care. Let's follow now a shepherd, walking the edge of the pasture. His hands are cracked from wind and wool, but in his satchel, he carries a strip of cloth and a flask of vinegar. At midday, when he stops to eat, he'll pour a little into his hands, rub it between his palms, and then rinse with stream water. It's sharp, but he likes it. It wakes him up. For shepherds and farmers, cleanliness was about function. Dirty hands could infect wounds. Dirty clothes could invite fleas. So they kept what they could: cloths in the belt, soap tucked in a pouch, brushes made from stiff straw. Every bit helped. At the edge of the village is a small building. No windows, just a narrow door and a thatched roof. Inside are benches, barrels, and 3 great stones warmed by fire. This is the sweating room. Built by the villagers with shared effort, it is part bathhouse, part meeting place, part healing space. Today it is filled with steam. A woman sits near one of the barrels, her face pink from heat. She dips a ladle into water, pours it over the stones and watches the cloud rise. Beside her, a friend wraps a cloth around her shoulders and leans back. They don't speak loudly. The heat makes talking slow, but they smile. One offers dried lavender to rub into the skin. The other offers mint water for the hands. This isn't just cleaning, it's cleansing, for the body and for the spirit. Sweating rooms were not everywhere, but where they existed, they were precious. People came in with aches, coughs, sadness, and left cleaner in ways not always visible. Elsewhere, in a church kitchen, a group of women prepare the midday meal for the poor. Before they begin, they wash their hands in basins filled with warm water. Each cloth is used once, then rinsed, wrung out, and hung to dry. One woman adds rose water. Another says a short prayer. This work is holy, so must be their hand. The bread is sliced, the bowls filled, the food served with quiet dignity. And when the poor finish eating, they too are offered water to rinse their fingers, a cloth to dry them. Not everyone accepts, but the gesture remains. In this world, even small acts of care ripple outward. Now let's look inside a noble house again, where a tutor is teaching a young boy his letters. The lesson is long. The boy grows restless. Finally the tutor stops, pulls a cloth from his sleeve, and gently wipes the ink from the boy's hands. "You can't write with dirty fingers," he says softly. The boy doesn't argue. He likes the scent of the cloth, lemon, and something sweeter. He closes his eyes. Cleanliness and learning were linked, not just in books, but in how one carried themselves. A clean shirt, brushed hair, washed hands. These were signs of respect for knowledge. Now we cross the sea, into another land where the language is different, but the practices remain. In a stone house along the coast, a fisherman returns from the water. His clothes are soaked, his beard stiff with salt. He strips off his outer layers, places them near the fire, and dips his hands into a bucket, filled earlier with heated water. He washes his face, then runs his fingers through his hair. His wife brings a towel. No words, just warmth. He dries, changes, and sits down. There is broth waiting. The sea is harsh, but he smells like pine needles, soap made with resin from the trees above the cliffs. These regional differences in soap, some from ash, some from fat, some from clay, some from roots, were all aimed at the same thing: a sense of freshness, of return. Let's move inland now, to a school for noble girls. They sit in a sunlit room, with polished floors, learning music and poetry. Before each lesson, they are required to wash, not just their hands, but their faces, necks, and even their shoes. One girl dips a cloth in violet water, another in plain warm water. The teachers inspect each face, before allowing entry. Cleanliness in these places was part of character. No matter how wealthy, no matter how intelligent, being unclean was seen as disrespect. Of course, these standards were not equal. The rich had more tools, more time, more help, but the principles were shared, across classes, across towns, across countries. Even beggars in some cities carried cloths tied to their belts, used to wipe hands, faces, the edges of sleeves. Let's return now to a field at dusk, where a woman walks home with a basket on her hip. She's gathered roots for dyeing cloth. Her hands are stained red, her boots muddy. At the stream she stops, kneels, dips her fingers, rubs with a stone. She doesn't expect to get it all out, not tonight, but it feels good to try. At home, her husband will prepare a wash base, her daughter will bring out the linen cloths. They'll wipe one another's hands, rinse their feet, brush their hair, then sit by the fire and speak very little. Not because there is nothing to say, but because silence too is part of the rhythm. Clean bodies, tired feet, quiet heart. The day will end, as it always does, with water cooled, cloths folded, fire dimmed, and once again, we are reminded of the truth. They stayed clean not through convenience, not through constant soap, but through effort, through habit, through care. Their world was not always clean by our standards, but it was not careless. It was not dirty by choice. It was human. So now, as the stars stretch again across the sky, and the last candles burn to pools of wax, and the water in every basin grows still, we step again into sleep, with clean thoughts, with quiet hearts, with stories, gently told. The wind tonight is softer than usual. It moves through the trees without rushing. A long hush that weaves between branches, rooftops and chimney smoke. In the distance a dog barks once, then nothing. Even the owls are quiet. In a house near the village edge, where the path narrows into forest, a woman trims her fingernails by candlelight. She uses a small knife, not sharp, just steady, and flicks the clippings into the hearth. When she's finished, she wipes her fingers with vinegar and thyme water. The cloth she uses is square, dyed with old walnut husk, and smells like the woods after rain. She sets it down, then reaches for a comb, carved from horn, worn smooth from years of use, and begins to untangle her long black hair. No one else is awake in the house. This is her quiet time. This is when she tends to herself. It isn't vanity, it's ritual. And in the medieval world, ritual mattered, especially for cleanliness. Let's walk a few houses down, where a man sharpens scythes by a hanging lantern. His hands are stained with oil and grit, his wrists sore from the forge. But before he steps back inside, he wipes his palms with a cloth dipped in wine vinegar, then again with plain water. The oil won't come off completely. He doesn't expect it to, but he likes the smell of clean steel, the way his hands feel less heavy when the grime is gone. He hangs the cloth on a hook, near the door. Tomorrow it'll be washed with the others. Now, in the center of town, a small chapel prepares for Sunday. A woman sweeps the stone floor, another dusts the benches, and in the vestry the priest washes his hands in rose water. Not for not for fashion, but for reverence. There are no pews in this chapel, just benches. No stained glass, just simple panes. But every corner is scrubbed, every cloth on the altar is changed, every basin emptied and refilled. Cleanliness in sacred places was expected, even when water was scarce, and this care extended to people too. In the small homes surrounding the chapel, families prepare their clothes for Sunday morning. One girl sits near the hearth, brushing a woolen dress with stiff straw. Her mother combs her hair, section by section, while humming a hymn. The father washes his hands in the barrel out back, using soap made from lard and nettles. It smells earthy, sharp, not pleasant, but it cleans. He splashes his face with cold water and dries it on his sleeve. Tomorrow he will carry a carved spoon in his belt, tuck a clean cloth into his collar, and wear his best boots. All because it is Sunday, a clean day. Let's walk now through the fields, past the dew-covered grass and the low stone fences, to a cottage where a midwife prepares her bath. She checks her cloths boiled yesterday, dried by the fire, folded carefully in a stack. Each one smells of chamomile and iron. She has soap too, not much, but enough for her hands. She carries 2 small flasks, one with lavender oil, the other with a strong wine vinegar. These are her tools, not just for birth, but for care afterward, for wiping the baby, washing the mother, clearing the blood, refreshing the space. Midwives, like healers, understood that cleanliness could ease pain, calm fear, and invite strength. It wasn't perfect, but it was purposeful. Now we return to a larger town, where bathhouses still operate, though more quietly now. Inside, a man sits on a wooden bench, feet in a steaming tub, wiping his arms with a cloth. A servant pours water over his shoulders, slow and steady. This is no grand bath. It's private, tucked away behind a shop. But here, for a few coins, one can feel new. The man breathes deeply. His hair is long, wet and tangled. A second servant brushes it with a wooden comb. This was common in towns with markets, traveling merchants, pilgrims, scribes, all seeking a moment of rest. Cleanliness wasn't just about body, it was about readiness, for trade, for talk, for trust. Now let's pause beside a small river, where two women rinse clothes on a flat stone. They chat softly, dipping cloth, rubbing it with a bar of soap made from goat fat and ashes, then beating it gently against the rock. They are not in a hurry. Behind them, a boy washes his feet, sitting on the bank. He's scraped his heel and winces a little as the water touches. One of the women hands him a strip of clean linen. He ties it carefully around his foot, then runs. These rivers were lifelines. For drinking, for watering crops, for cleaning. But they weren't treated carelessly. People built platforms, carved washstones, dug small basins away from the main stream, to keep water clean for everyone. Respect for water was part of being clean. Let's visit now a traveling performer, resting under a tree just outside a walled city. He carries a satchel of masks, a small drum and a pouch of rosemary sprigs. Each evening, before he sings or plays, he chews a rosemary leaf, wipes his face with wine, and dusts his clothes with chalk to keep them looking new. When he finds a basin, he washes his hands, always. He says it helps the voice, but really it helps the mind. A clean face lets him step into character, become someone else, then return. Even those who wandered made time for ritual cleansing. Now, in a narrow alley behind a butcher's shop, a woman prepares to wash the meat table. She mixes hot water with vinegar, wipes the wood in long, even strokes, then rinses again. Each day, she does this, and each day the smell fades a little sooner. Clean tools, clean hands, clean surfaces. Even in the rougher parts of town, even where blood ran down gutters, the desire for order remained. Let's pause again, in a quiet room, where a sick man lies on a straw mattress. A friend sits beside him, soaking a cloth in lavender water, then wiping the man's brow. The cloth is small. It was once part of a tunic, now it brings coolness. The sick man doesn't speak, but when the cloth touches his skin, he closes his eyes. Sometimes cleanliness is not about dirt. It's about comfort, care, grace. And in that it becomes sacred. Now the sun has dipped again, lamps are lit, children yawn, and in kitchens and cottages, the rituals begin once more. A girl folds clean shifts. A boy scrubs his feet with cold water. A woman brushes flour from her arms. A man rubs soap into his beard. A grandmother wipes a table. A farmer soaks his hands. A baker sweeps crumbs. A monk folds his towel. A mother combs her daughter's hair. And through every act, small, slow, silent, the world softens. Not spotless, not perfect, but cared for. And that care passed down, whispered, shared, remembered is the true heart of medieval cleanliness. So as you drift now, deeper into stillness, with the fire crackling low and the stars unmoving in the sky, know this: they stayed clean not with plenty, but with purpose, not with ease, but with effort, not with fear but with rhythm, and not to impress but to feel human. Sleep well as they did, with clean hands, clean hearts and a world of gentle stories to carry you through the night. It is raining tonight. Not harshly, not with thunder, just a long, slow fall, steady drops on rooftops, puddles forming in the soft ground, the smell of wet earth rising like a memory. Inside the cottages, the sounds are different now. The crackle of fire, the drip of water from cloaks hung to dry, the quiet rustle of wool being peeled away from skin. A young boy sits near the hearth, legs stretched out toward the flame, holding his feet above a warm stone. His boots are beside him, soaked and muddy. His mother kneels with a cloth, dipping it into a bowl of hot water mixed with rosemary and salt. He says nothing, she says nothing, but her hands move gently, wiping one foot, then the other, pressing out the cold. This is not punishment. It's not even routine, it's simply what is done. In the medieval world, on nights like this, when water falls from the sky and the cold sinks deep into the bones, cleaning is both comfort and necessity. Elsewhere in the village, a shepherd returns from the hills. His cloak is soaked through. He has walked for miles, guiding the sheep to lower ground, where the grass is thickest and the wind is softer. When he reaches home, he lights a lantern and kneels beside the rain barrel. He dips a jug, fills it and carries it inside. He pours the water into a basin, and adds crushed pine needles, saved from the last forest walk. He washes his hands, his arms, his face, then scrubs his feet. Later he will lie down, dry, warm and clean as a man who sleeps with animals can be. But it will be enough. Let's step inside a quiet home built near the abbey, where a group of nuns prepare for their evening ritual. The air smells of herbs, sage, chamomile, and sweet woodruff. They stand in a stone washroom, each at her basin, silently scrubbing her hands. One rinses her mouth with wine and salt, another dabs oil behind her ears. Their shifts are simple, their motions exact. They do not speak, but the space hums with reverence. For many religious women, washing was not only about health, it was about humility. Before entering prayer, one must be cleansed. A girl who has just joined the order struggles to scrub her calloused heels. An older sister gently helps her, wrapping the girl's feet in a warm cloth afterward. The girl's eyes close. The older sister smiles. Let's return now to a family of carpenters who live near the town wall. The father has been shaping door frames all day, his hands dry and splintered. His eldest son brings him a shallow bowl of milk and warm water mixed with honey. This isn't a treat. It's for his hands. He dips them slowly, letting the mixture soak into his cracked skin. He sighs. His daughter combs sawdust from her brother's hair. The mother wipes the work table with wine vinegar and a bundle of thyme tied with twine. The home smells like wood and work, but not dirt. Each one has a role. Each one understands the pattern. Let's pause in a healer's home. Part herb shed, part kitchen, part apothecary. An old woman sits with a young apprentice. They grind dried mint and sage, boil it with vinegar, then soak strips of linen in the liquid. The cloths are folded, stored in a basket, and used each morning to wipe the body. They cool the skin, the woman says, and keep the mind from wandering. She teaches without books, only with gestures and taste. The apprentice washes her hands in rainwater after preparing the herbs. She dries them over a flame. They've used the same water bowl for weeks, but it is always emptied, always refilled, always blessed with something fragrant. Cleanliness here is patient, not constant, but respect. Now let's walk into a stone tower on the edge of the village, where a scribe lives alone. He writes with ink made from oak gall. It stains everything, his fingers, his nails, even his wrists. Each night, he scrubs the ink away with pumice stone and soap made from ash and sheep fat. He hates the smell, but he likes the feeling of being clean. His desk is worn smooth. His cloths are stacked neatly. His basin sits on the windowsill, where the breeze keeps it cool. He believes a clean desk leads to clean writing, a clean hand to honest words. We walk again to the stream. This time, under moonlight, a group of girls laugh as they rinse their hair. The water is cold. They squeal and complain, but no one stops. They brush their hair with bundles of grass. One girl pours flower water over another's shoulder. A third braids her sister's hair with fingers trembling from the cold. They dry off with shared linen, then run barefoot home, hair still wet, hearts light. These are the moments they will remember. Not the dirt, not the soap, but the care. Let's visit a baker, just before sunrise. His arms are covered in flour. His apron is crusted with dough, but between every batch, he rinses his hands in a basin near the fire. He keeps a cloth soaked in lemon and ash. He wipes the counter before each round of kneading. Cleanliness in his craft is not luxury. It is survival. Flour sours, dough molds, hands matter. Even when the shop is busy, even when the line of customers curls around the door, he wipes, rinses, repeats. Now let's pause at a tailor's table. A woman sews by candlelight, stitching patches onto a cloak. Her needlework is delicate, but her fingers are black with soot from the fire. Every so often she dips them in a bowl of lye water, scrubs gently, dries, and returns to sewing. She likes the rhythm of it. Stitch, rinse, fold, stitch. The cloth she's mending belonged to her mother, and she wants it to be worn again, clean and whole. Across the village, in the home of a candle maker, a child washes wax from her arms with vinegar and lard soap. She hums a tune she learned from the nuns, a prayer about light, meant to be sung while washing. Her father stirs a pot of tallow. Her mother lines up wicks. The smell is strong, but the child knows it means warmth in winter. When she's done washing, she wraps herself in a clean shift, and her mother braids her hair before bed. And outside still it rains. The rooftops shine. The stone streets glisten. The fields drink. Inside each home, water is poured. Cloth is wrung. Skin is scrubbed. Linen is folded. Not because they feared filth, but because they honored the body. A clean body was a tool, a vessel, a companion. So once again, as the firelight fades, and the rain whispers at the window, and the bowls are emptied for the last time tonight, you understand, they stayed clean not through ease, but through rhythm. Not with plenty, but with care. Not with rush, but with attention. Not with fear, but with quiet pride. And as you rest, your own body softens, your breath slow, and their story becomes yours. A story of cloth and water, of fingers and bowls, of hair brushed, of wounds washed, of warmth found, in simple human hands. The sun rises slowly this morning. The fog has not lifted yet. It clings low to the grass, and stones like a blanket pulled tightly over a resting world. Birds call softly through the mist. In the distance, a cowbell sounds once, then stops. Inside a small stone house, a woman pours water from a copper jug into a basin. The water is cold, drawn from the well before sunrise. She leans over, cups it in her hands, and splashes her face. The shock wakes her. Her breath still smells faintly of sleep. She wipes her face with a linen cloth. Then gently, she rubs behind her ear. She does this every morning, before she touches the fire, before she wakes the others, before she kneads the bread. It is the first act of her day. Cleanliness, to her, is not something to be seen. It is something to be felt on the skin, in the mind, in the quiet. Let's visit a blacksmith, already hard at work. The forge is hot. His shirt clings to his back. His arms are covered in ash and soot, sweat running down his temples. He takes breaks in short, quiet moments between hammer strikes. He wipes his hands on a damp rag, not to remove the black completely, but to feel some relief. The cloth hangs near the door, always damp, soaked each morning in salt water. At midday, he will plunge his hands into a small trough, rinse the grit away, dry his arms in the sun, then return to work. He does not complain. This is his rhythm. Cleanliness, in his world, is not for show. It is part of the body's balance. His fingers must stay nimble. His grip must stay true. And in the evenings, before he eats, he scrubs with soap, hard, grainy, sharp-smelling. He sits with his wife near the fire. She pours vinegar water over his forearms. He smiles. She doesn't need to ask. They've done this for years. Now walk with me to the edge of the village, where the woods begin. A man gathers leaves, not for food, but for cleaning. He chooses certain types, broad, soft, thick-veined. He knows which ones irritate the skin, and which soothe. He returns home, and drops them into boiling water with lavender. After steeping, he cools the mixture, and uses it to wash his feet. No one taught him this. He learned from watching his grandmother. She never had soap, but her feet were always clean. He adds a few drops of vinegar, and soaks a rag, then wipes his neck and shoulders. These herbal washes were common in places where money was scarce. Vinegar, mint, marigold, sage, even onion skins, all used in some way to refresh and cleanse. Let's stop by the town mill, where workers unload sacks of grain. The dust rises quickly, covering clothes, hair, arms. The youngest of them, a boy of about 10, sneezes twice, then wipes his nose with the back of his sleeve. An older worker hands him a cloth dipped in warm water. "Don't use your sleeve," he says gently. "You'll only grind it in." The boy laughs and obeys. At the end of the shift, each worker steps behind the mill, where barrels of rainwater stand waiting. They wash their arms, their faces, sometimes even their dust clings to everything in the mill, but it does not follow them home. Now follow the road toward the monastery gardens. A novice monk tends the paths, sweeping away dead leaves with a bundle of reeds. He stops often to wipe his brow. In his belt is a cloth, not fancy, just square, brown-edged from years of use. It's folded in a particular way, and he always folds it back exactly after use. Later he will help clean the refectory. Before touching the bowls or jugs, he will wash again hands, face and behind his ear. The monastery requires it. Cleanliness here is devotion. Let's visit a mother bathing her newborn. The room is warm, not hot, just gently heated by the coals under a small tub. She cradles the baby, pours ladles of herb-infused water along the tiny arms, the legs, the belly. The baby doesn't cry, only blinks. She uses a cloth softer than anything else in the house, saved only for this. It smells of sheep's milk, soap and fennel. The ritual is slow. Her hands are careful. She speaks in a whisper. When she's done, she wraps the child in wool, presses her face to his, and breathes. The water is still warm. She dips her fingers one last time, wipes them on her skirt, and thanks the silence. Let's move now to a traveling merchant. He's camped outside a walled town, fire crackling low, horse tied nearby. He carries a pouch of soap root powder. He mixes it with water from his flask, and rubs it into his hands, then wipes with a linen square. His face is dusty. He uses the last of his mint oil to freshen his beard. Cleanliness, for travelers, is half survival, half respect. If he appears filthy, no one will buy. If he smells strange, no one will trade. Even in movement, even on muddy roads, the rituals remain. He folds the cloth, rinses his mouth, then lies back beneath the stars. Now step into a large manor kitchen. Servants work quickly, peeling, chopping, baking. One drops a pot, and broth spills across the floor. The head cook does not shout. She brings a cloth, dips it into a bucket of soap water, and wipes the spill herself. The servant watches, then joins her. Later, before serving, every worker rinses their hands in lemon water, and wipes them on shared towels, washed each morning by the laundry maid. In noble houses, the standards were stricter, but the reasons the same. A clean hand was a safe hand. A clean kitchen made clean food. Cleanliness was not class, it was conduct. Let's visit an old weaver at his loom. He dyes cloth, using madder root, nettle and indigo. His hands are stained red and blue. His nails hold tiny threads of wool. When he finishes his work for the day, he uses clay and vinegar to scrub his finger. He likes the feeling of starting each morning with clean hands, so he can see exactly what new colors cling to his skin by evening. He keeps a basin under his bench. It smells faintly of cedar. Now pause in the center of the village, where a girl refills the foot washing bowl. She places warm water inside, adds crushed rosemary, and sets a small brick beside it. Her grandfather will use it to scrub his heels, a habit he's kept since his childhood. He doesn't explain why. He doesn't have to. She sits with him, hands him the towel when he's done, folds it again when he finishes. They don't speak. They don't need to. This is care. This is memory. This is a form of love. And now, as the sky softens toward dusk again, the water in the basins grows still. The soap cakes dry on their wooden rests. The cloths are wrung and hung. The brushes are set beside the fire. The combs are cleaned of hair. The tubs are emptied. The air smells of lavender and fire smoke. And across this world of thatched roofs, brick chimneys, narrow paths, and glowing windows, people rest with clean hands, with brushed hair, with quiet breath, with bodies honored by small, humble rituals. This is how they stayed clean. And this is how they slept. The sky is dark now, not storm dark, not deep night dark, just the soft, full dark of a world ready to sleep. A few stars blink between thin clouds. The wind hums gently through the thatch roofs, and the old trees beyond the fields. In the village, every door is closed. The last candles flicker in windows, fires crackle low, warming the stones, and people settle into the final rhythm of their day. Inside one cottage, an old man wraps a clean cloth around his foot. He's been tending the garden all week. His skin is dry, cracked along the heel, and tonight he's soaked it in a basin of warm rosemary water, then added a bit of soft lard. He tucks the cloth tight, lies back on the straw-stuffed mattress, and pulls a blanket to his chest. This has been his nighttime ritual for years, even when he was younger, even before his beard turned white. His mother taught it to him. She used to say, "The day ends with your feet. If they're clean, your sleep is deep." Across the village, in the baker's home, a woman wipes the kitchen table with warm water and lemon balm. Her hands move in wide, slow circles. Her cloth is soft, worn thin, but always washed and dried near the hearth. She doesn't rush. This is her favorite part of the day. Everything put back where it belongs. The world small and quiet. Her mind at ease. She pours herself a cup of broth, sits down, wipes her hands one last time. In the corner, her son brushes his teeth with crushed mint leaves and ash. He spits into a bowl, wipes his mouth and smiles. He doesn't like the taste, but he likes the freshness. Upstairs, her daughter is combing her hair, counting each stroke, not to get to the end, just to stay in rhythm. In the monastery nearby, the bell has rung for the final prayer. The brothers line up to wash their hands at the lavatorium. The stone basins are full. The cloths above are freshly folded. Each man dips his hands, dries them in silence, and walks to the chapel. This act, cleansing before prayer, has never changed. It is not about being without dirt. It is about being present. And presence in this world was its own kind of cleanliness. Let's travel again, one last time, through the corners of medieval life. In a town by the sea, a woman wipes her baby's face with a cloth soaked in fennel water. The child giggles. The cloth smells like anus. The wind outside carries salt from the wind. In a mountainside hut, a man boils water with crushed juniper berries. He pours it into a bowl and washes the dust from his face, then scrubs his palms one finger at a time. In a tavern, a traveler rinses his hands before eating. The barkeep watches, offers a cloth. Not on a farm, a girl brushes her horse, then wipes her own arms with vinegar to remove the smell. She doesn't mind the smell, but she likes the ritual. It makes her feel new. In a noble estate, the lady of the house soaks her feet in rose water and wraps them in soft linen. Her maid helps braid her hair. They speak very little. In a weaving room, a boy scrubs dye from under his nails. He hums while he works. The humming helps the scrubbing go fast. And in hundreds of homes, from the largest halls to the smallest huts, this same quiet story plays out. Water poured, cloth dipped, skin wiped, hair brushed, feet dried, teeth cleaned, hands folded, sleep approached. Because in the end, they all knew something that modern life often forgets. That cleaning the body is also cleaning the day. That a washed face carries less worry. That a brushed head carries fewer thoughts. That cool water can pull heat from sorrow. That drying the hands can mean letting go. Even in the darkest seasons, the long cold nights, when food was scarce and sickness whispered through the door, people still found time to scrub, to soak, to wipe, to tend. Not because they had to, but because they were still here. The blacksmith still wiped his brow. The priest still soaked his hands. The servant still combed the master's cloak. The wife still poured vinegar into the bowl. The shepherd still rinsed his feet. The sick still wiped their mouths with mint. The dying were still wrapped in cloth that smelled of lavender. Even at the end of a hard life, or the start of a new one, the human need for cleanness, for dignity, did not disappear. And now, as our story draws close to its own end, we sit with one last picture. A woman stands near the fire. She dips a cloth in lemon balm and she wipes the floor, slow and steady. Then she dips it again, folds it, and lays it across the barrel for morning. She looks toward the sleeping room. Her family is already in bed. She doesn't wake them. She just sits, hands in her lap, hair tied back, the faint scent of soap and ash rising from the cloth. This is not a dramatic moment. There is no sudden discovery, no great event, only peace. This is how medieval people kept clean. With cloth and water, with soap and ash, with care and habit, with patience and rhythm, with pride and with love. Not always visible, not always perfect, but always human. If you are still awake, then I think you have to see the video from 17th minute of the story, or play this side video as maybe it can help you sleep better.